Stage 5, and they make their way from Arras through to Amiens, and it is 189.5 kilometres. There are no climbs on the stage. There's the one intermediate sprint just short of the halfway mark with a fraction under 100 kilometres remaining. But it's a fairly lumpy approach towards the finish line. The rain and the wind have returned. Peter Kenyak and Chris Froome at the Commonwealth Memorial at the beginning of the stage, marking their respects. And appropriately sombre weather conditions. And then once they return to their bikes, out onto the open roads where the rain continues to fall. Arras was the scene of many extensive battles throughout the First World War. In fact, on June the 26th, 1915, more than 15,000 artillery shells were dropped on the city. New Zealanders played a big role as well, digging tunnels underneath at no man's land. This was the first breakaway of the day. Nicolas Hédet from the Cofidis team going off the front. Quickly joined by Pierre-Luc Péruchon of Breton Séché. These two at one point building up an advantage of more than 3 minutes, but Hédet has since returned to the main field. Peloton making their way past another one of the cemeteries scattered throughout this region earlier on in the stage today. There will be a lot of them throughout today's stage as they enter the department of the Somme. 191 riders taking to the start line with 141 kilometres remaining on the stage and just one rider remaining off the front. Pierre-Luc Péruchon of Breton Séché, a 29-year-old Frenchman, 28-year-old Frenchman, I should say, in his first Tour de France, getting some TV time. He was with Nicolas Hédet of the Cofidis squad a little earlier, but Nicolas has since gone back to the main peloton, where once again crashes have been the story of the day. Unfortunately, Nacer Bouhanni, the French sprinter from the Cofidis team, a teammate of Hédet, he was involved in a heavy fall, has since abandoned, has been taken by ambulance to hospital. We've got no great information as to the extent of his injuries, but needless to say, they're too severe for him to continue. The weather is following a similar pattern to what we had last year. Last year, the race starting in Leeds, a region that is notorious for its foul weather, and it was glorious sunshine. It arrives in France, better known for its summer conditions at this time of year, and it's wet, cold and miserable. This year, starting up in the Netherlands in Utrecht, which is also another part of the world that is generally fairly wet and cold, a glorious sunshine once again. It was damp and windy in Zeeland, but then since coming down here to France itself, the northern part of the country no less, it is wet, windy, and they are tough conditions. Team Sky flag with a RAF flag sitting below it, making an appearance, appropriately so in this part of the country. The peloton have just made their way through the town of Roux, which in 1911 had 1,027 inhabitants, but as a result of the damage done throughout the Great War, it took until 1982.
Hi, and welcome on Radio Talk Race car number 2 just behind the pack. It's been a hectic start to this stage going to Amiens with a very serious crash indeed. The pack wasn't going very fast, but a lot of riders were sent to the ground. The most seriously touched was, of course, Nacer Bouhanni of the Cofidis team, who was sent to the ground on the left-hand side of the road with 4 or 5 of his teammates, including Danny Navarro, race over for Nacer Bouhanni, who apparently hurt his wrist. So a hectic start to this stage, and it should carry on with difficult weather conditions and a lot of wind all the way to the finish.
And this is one of the major cemeteries that's scattered throughout this region. A French cemetery and memorial commemorating the fierce battles between October 1914 and September 1915. And it sits at the top of the hill overlooking Artois, 15 kilometres from Arras. The necropolis was inaugurated on the 2nd of August 1925. It brings together the remains of soldiers from over 150 cemeteries that were scattered throughout the region and has put them all in the one spot. And that circle that you see, that was opened up on the 11th of November 2014, the centenary of the Great War. The memorial was inaugurated, the Ring of Remembrance, with the perimeter some 345 metres, of which the names of 579,606 soldiers are engraved. All nationalities and no distinction on their rank. It's almost 600,000 names of soldiers on that Ring of Remembrance. Really does put it into context, the significance of the Great War. Just the sheer numbers are mind-boggling. And today, throughout the stage, the Orica Green Edge team will be honouring the some 295,000 Anzacs who fought, and some 46,000 of them who sacrificed their lives throughout World War I, with armbands on their jersey, with the words, "Lest we forget." And it's appropriate that that Australian squad, not only with Australians on the team, but they've also got Julian Dean, a Kiwi, as one of their sports directors. Just briefly back to Bauke Mollema, the rider in the black and white colours from Trek Factory Racing, who we saw with that mechanical problem. He said yesterday on sectors 3 and sectors 6 of the Pavé, he kept getting caught out of position, but rust would come back collecting and dragging back to the front, and Mollema was happy just to survive. There's been a few crashes so far today. In fact, there's been 2 reported crashes. One of them has resulted in Nasser Bouhanni abandoning the race, and he was one of the favourites for today's stage. Another one involved Greg Van Avermaet. This is the Canadian War Memorial from the First World War. Engraved with the names of the battle victims, it was erected to the memory of 66,000 Canadians who sacrificed their lives here. It commemorates the battle of the 9th of April 1917. And many of us in the commentary tribune have made a pact to refrain from using the term battle today on the roads in terms of the peloton. Well, there'll be cycling-related battles, but they pale into insignificance by comparison to what was seen here 100 years ago throughout the First World War. And on a more positive note, Rick Zabel, the son of Eric Zabel, won his first professional race 2 days ago. That was across at the Tour of Austria, and it also happened to fall on Eric Zabel's birthday. This is Peter Kenyak at the front, the white colours now of the British national champion. We saw he and Chris Froome laying a wreath at the Commonwealth War Memorial at the beginning of the stage in Arras. The wind has sprung up once again. In fact, it's one of the windiest days that we've seen. And the tension continues in the peloton, which is perfectly understandable, particularly after what we saw on stage 2 with the race being split to pieces by the Tinkoff Saxo team of Alberto Contador. There's Tony Martin in the yellow jersey. An outstanding performance yesterday. Keep in mind that for the final 20 kilometres he was riding the Italian Matteo Trentin's bike. Matteo Trentin, one of the teammates of Tony Martin, is 7 centimetres shorter than Tony Martin, and he has the brakes on the opposite side. Tony Martin is a rider who uses the right hand lever to the front brake and the left obviously to the rear. Matteo Trentin is the other way around. It would have caused all sorts of confusion. The bike was clearly the wrong size for him, But inside the final 4 kilometres, he saw his opportunity and he seized it. It is Florian Sénéchal from the Cofidis squad. They've had a disappointing day. They were hoping that Nacer Bouhanni might have been able to get them the stage win. He's crashed and has abandoned. Bouhanni was 6th on the stage yesterday. He's had a tough few weeks, Nacer Bouhanni. His form looked to be good after stage victories at the beginning of June at the Criterium de Dauphiné. He was lining up the week before this race started as one of the big favourites for the French National Championships and crashed inside the final few kilometres. Involved in falls as well on stage 2 here, and then another fall today. And strong rumours that Richie Porte and Rowan Dennis will be teammates next year across at BMC. So if Richie Porte does go across to BMC, is he the leader or is it TJ Van Garderen? We'll see what happens at this year's Tour de France. It's an American team after all. TJ Van Garderen is an American and he's sitting in 3rd place here at the moment. A chance for a podium finish, and he's only 26 years of age. Meanwhile, Richie Porte, the Tasmanian, at 30 years of age, well, maybe even if he goes across to BMC, he still won't be the #1 man at the Tour de France, but he'll go to the Giro d'Italia once again as the team leader. Had a great start to the season, Richie Porte. And Race Radar just saying there's been a crash in the peloton, and here is the evidence. That is Peter Winning, the Dutchman, who looks to be okay from Orica Green Edge. And at the Rafael Majka is the rider from Tinkoff Saxo. And the rider that is on the deck a little bit longer, Thiago Machado from the Katusha squad. For IM Cycling, the riders down as Jerome Capel. And it looks like Tyler Farrar. There's Brian Cockar once again from Europcar. Well, so much for the relaxed attitude back in the peloton. I'm sure that that is leading to the number of crashes on today's stage. Not quite as attentive as they normally would be. As they enter the department of the Somme, another war memorial, another cemetery on the side of the road.
Now the rain is starting to come down. It's that misty kind of rain that you very often get in the northern part of France. His gap is plummeting now, Phil, as we look at 7 kilometres to go to the sprint point, and a lot of riders are going to take a serious interest in this sprint point. And there's the yellow jersey coming to the front as well of Tony Martin.
Well, I'll tell you why, because the wind has got into the peloton, Paul. Take a look at that split now as they've made that left-hand turn. Very wise to pay attention. We've had a lot of simple crashes today when the field have been together. Straight roads, most of them. Nicholas Roach has been one of the riders for Sky who has fallen. He's safely back in the race, but the French have lost a top sprinter in Nacer Bouhanni. He's gone to hospital with a number of suspected broken bones.
Yes, coming now into the town of Menil-Arouez on the departmental 172. The lone leader's gap is plummeting very quickly. I think we'll see a very rapid sprint here. The organisation over the last couple of years has changed the points allotted to the intermediate sprint point and the King of the Mountains. So it's going to be quite important. There are 20 points available for the first rider to go through the town of Roncourt. Have a quick look there. There's Peter Sagan. In the middle, just sitting on the wheel there of Alberto Contador. There is that little split. I think that split was actually not caused by the wind. I think it was more likely to have been caused by the little accident that happened once again to Brian Cockar, the young rider from Europcar. He's been involved in a couple of crashes. The saddest story is Nacer Bouhanni, the big sprinter from Cofidis, and he would normally be wearing the same jersey as these two riders at the back end of the main field. He was involved in a mass pileup with 4 other teammates who went down. They actually crashed into a waterlogged ditch at the side of the road, but Bouhanni was unable to continue, and he's been taken off to hospital. That's Alberto Contador on the left-hand side. Easy to recognise his style, but Ethics Quick-Step, despite the fact that they're defending the overall lead of Tony Martin, are also thinking about trying to get Mark Cavendish a little bit closer in the sprint competition. There's a green jersey and green helmet, and now he's riding his specially equipped green bicycle, Andre Greipel, who leads that competition, but only by 6 points from Peter Sagan, who with his third place finish yesterday moved himself right up in the overall standings in that competition. The gap now down to 27 seconds, and we are 5 kilometres to go to the sprint point. These riders here all struggling to try and get themselves back into contact. This is the group of Coquard. Well, just picking their way around there. 122 is the number of Brian Coquard, and he has been a great rider. That's Serge Pauwels from MTN Quebec just at the back. He too is scuttling along in this rather tricky and precarious situation.
The roads are quite damp now, and the drizzle which is falling is causing quite a few problems. The riders, Paul, who started with those tyres pumped up at too high a pressure, are going to be paying the price on these roads.
Well, you've got to be very careful and pay attention to your some things. You have to really rely on your own judgment when it comes to a day like this. And I know a lot of riders, although the mechanics, they pump the tyres up at the start of the day with a compressor, but it really comes down to the rider's own personal feeling of letting down a little bit, just so you know exactly what sort of tyre pressure. The problem with compressors is it's very easy to pick up the pressure, but you've got to judge it and let them down to, on a day like today, maybe 70 or 80 pounds per square inch.
Perrichon getting on with it. He was a pretty good track rider when he was a youngster. He was the track champion in the Madison. That's the two-man team race on the track when he was a junior. As we continue our journey across the Somme now, which was ravaged by the First World War. Over 200 villages in this department were totally destroyed by the battle. 21 seconds, the gap on the line. He's having a very good opening week in his quest to win the green jersey. He'd never worn it until this year. Just look at the move on the right by Greipel. He's got a nice last 100-metre kick there as he comes up towards the line. Well, the Guerrilla's riding well this week.
Well, he's got the power on these nasty stages. Well, watch the white jersey just a little bit further back, being very attentive in that fluorescent yellow helmet. That's Peter Sagan. Looks back there. He cruises across the line in 4th place. That keeps him right up there in contention.
So Mark Cavendish also making sure he earns a few points here as well.
Looking down on the Necropole Nationale de Rancourt, over 2.5 hectares, one of the largest French necropolises in this area. 9,000 French men buried here, 5,500 lying in individual tombs. Really is quite a day here as we move through the battlefields of the Somme on the western front of the Great Wall, World War I, the war that was supposed to be the war that ended all wars. Here's the lone leader now. A number of riders are queuing up to try and get themselves up to him. But for Pierre-Luc Perrichon, who actually was born in Bourg-en-Bresse, a long way from this part of France. He's well over into the eastern part of France where he's from. His only victory as a professional really was the 2012 Paris-Camembert. Riding in the Tour de France for the first time. He's gapped down very quickly. 4th place given there to Mark Cavendish. 3rd place in the sprint. A bit further down, Tony Martin, Stybar, Rigoberto Urán. I'll tell you what, people, Phil, a lot of people are not really talking too much about Rigoberto Urán, who rides for the same team as Mark Cavendish and Tony Martin, but he's very attentive, Urán, and he's always near the front end of the action.
And even though he was 7th overall yesterday, he still stopped and made sure Tony Martin was looked after as well. So he's certainly doing the team race at the moment.
Well, the statue here of Maréchal Foch. He was the head of the 9th Army in France during the Battle of the Marne, and he helped to coordinate the fight between the British, French and Belgian armies during the race to the sea.
You see the wind, the crosswind just before the sprint. We saw it. Well, they've continued the pressure at the front and the split is there at the back. Big peloton forming behind the race now. If the pressure stays on, they won't see this bunch again at the front today.
Well, not one of the days when you can have a good laugh and a chat in the main field with your teammates. Over on the right-hand side, Michael Kwiatkowski He's done a lot of work for the team so far. They are a great team, Etixx Quick-Step, but they are really like the Three Musketeers. There's Marcus Seeberg over on the right-hand side, the tall rider. And this is a group just a little bit further back. I'm presuming this is still the group of Brian Coquard trying to get himself in there, but the riders will not be happy with the greyness and dark on the horizon. They're heading right back into the storm.
A barren place, and all of these fields had to be rebuilt after the Great War of 1418. Everywhere in this region totally destroyed.
Just see the way the leaves are rustling and ruffling there. The gap, by the way, to the second group on the road, which includes Wilco Kelderman from Jumbo. They are 2.5 minutes back. Looks very much like the London Cemetery we just went past there, facing the Great Battle of High Wood. That battle took place in July of 1916, lasted up until the 15th of September.
And again, the roads are narrower here, and once more the team seems to have themselves sorted out. Leopold Koenig is the rider in black, looking after the Sky Train at the moment.
I think we're looking now, Phil, once more a little bit of a truce at the front end of this main field. It really is quite amazing to see that the lines of the teams. You've got Astana on the far side, on the top there, looking after Nibali. Then you've got BMC after Vanguard, and then Contador. Really is almost like a drag strip race, trying to line up and prove which team is the strongest team of the men who are looking to win this bike race overall. Alejandro Valverde is the rider just moving up to the front. He's looking for the line of riders from Movistar.
As Paul was just saying, you can see all the teams next to each other, and it's not that they're just cruising along. They are basically drag racing each other. It might look a little easier from the outside, but the guy doing the work in the front, he is working pretty hard here. So it is still tough competition out there. And after the pecking order is established, there's not much space for other teams or other riders. In the next few days, you will always see the same few teams in the front. Every now and then you will see another jersey from another team, but not much. There's just not enough space for the smaller teams up here.
Well, the second group here is still almost 3 minutes back now, and I don't think they'll join the front again today. Looking at the second bunch of riders here, Steve Cummings is the third rider there from the right on the MTN Quebecer squad, and approaching 3 minutes the gap now. Although the front runners have slowed down, these boys haven't speeded up. But interesting to see Richie Porte got caught out here along with Peter Kenyuk.
Yep, the rider on the front was Perec Federigo of Bretagne Sèche-Environnement, and these riders, just looking at their attitude there, Phil, I think they've realised that it's all done and dusted for the day. They got caught out. I think Richie Porte, just like Peter Kenyuk, probably got caught out in the back half of the split when it happened, and if you're not on the back end of this group, it's very difficult to get yourself back into the race in these crosswinds. It's about 8 kilometres now until they turn down, and you see Tony Martin now. He realises that the race is about to hot up. He's getting that rain jacket off, making sure that he doesn't overheat. It's a very important thing to do to control the body temperature. Very often in the past, riders have left that raincoat on for just a little bit too long. They've overheated and gone into glucose exhaustion. Looking down here at the Franco-British Memorial at Thiepval, one of the most imposing British memorials in the world, on the site of an old destroyed castle. The ridge overlooks the village of the former battlefields, and it commemorates the Great Battle, the Franco-British offensive of the Battle of the Somme, which took place in the second half of 1916, inaugurated by the Prince of Wales, the future Edward VIII, and of course the President of the French Republic at the time, Albert Lebrun, in 1932. 16 massive great pillars with 4 faces of white Portland stone support an array of arches in brick and stone, engraved with the names of 74,000 British and South African troops who lost their fields and went missing in the battlefields of the Somme in July 1916. Looking down on the race route now at 53 kilometres to go, it seems as if the dampness has disappeared a fraction. I'm just having a quick look at the finishing straight, and the finishing straight is a little bit damp. But as I mentioned earlier, I think the race route, the race run in today is really quite a safe one. As we look over the last kilometres, we come through 6 kilometres to go. There are 3 roundabouts between the kilometre 6 to go and 4.5 to go. And then we have a big wide boulevard. There's a bit of a sweeper at 2.5 kilometres to go to the left. And then inside of the final kilometre, there's a right-hand bend before the riders line up to finish right in the shadows of the Cathedral of Amiens. Beautiful old cathedral, which is at the moment being renovated and cleaned, and sits on the banks of the River Somme. But it's a wide boulevard, ideal for the sprinters. Most of the sprinters are in this leading group, but just look how tightly packed that group is. The white jersey you can see in the middle there with the red and yellow helmet on is Peter Sagan. He's been knocking on the door since the start of this race. He's second overall in the green jersey points competition. See the world champions jersey of Michael Kwiatkowski. Just looking down the line to see if I can spot where Andre Greipel is sitting. He leads the points competition. There's a chance once again there to have that quick look at that most imposing of memorials that I was talking about just a little bit earlier on. This memorial is angled towards the Ancre Valley, in the very position where the front lines were situated. You see it right on the top. British tombs are simple marks with the name of the buried soldier engraved on there, irrespective of the rider of the soldier's rank.
Well, the winds are indicated by the French and the Union flag here, and it is very, very strong. Stronger, I think, than we've seen since we started the Tour de France. And these fields, with all the trees gone, the trees destroyed by that First World War, and now we're finding bleak countryside here for the Tour de France, and it's a toughie. 3 minutes 14 to the second peloton. All of a sudden they've started to lose ground quite big.
Yes, I think their job's done. It's a question of survival for the riders. If you're not in the split when it happens, it's really very much a question of survival for the rest of the afternoon. There's Andre Greipel just tucked in at the back as they move through Thiepval. Again, this is number 80, the Département of the Somme. The dark horse in the Tour de France this year, in third place overall. He's just 13 seconds behind Chris Froome. And let's not forget, so far his team has a full complement of riders, and there's a very important team time trial on. So there's a crash. Again, a silly little crash just at the back end of the main field, and it was just on the right-hand side. It looks as if he touched the curbstone there. And rider went down. One of the teammates of Arnaud Démare, that's Steve Morabito. He's a Swiss rider for many years. He was a strong man on Team BMC Racing. Again, just as you start to relax, maybe not paying all that much attention, slipping back through the convoy of cars to maybe go and get on board another drink, and then all of a sudden you touch the curbstone at the side of the road, and if you lose the front part of your machine, it's very difficult to pull it back and recover from something like that. Getting confirmation in that group of riders dropped behind Richie Porte and Peter Kenyuk, joined by Rafael Majka and Alex Dowsett, and they're more than 3¼ minutes behind. These are the l'étang du Somme, the lakes of the Somme, and of course the memorial poppy. Poppy, which has become synonymous with the remembrance of the First World War, in the mining hole there of Boissel, or the Great Mine. The Boissel from the British lines was a site where the Welsh miners of the 9th Cheshire dug a tunnel to a site right underneath the German lines, where they placed 27 tons of ammonium nitrate explosives at a depth of 16 meters. And 2 minutes before the beginning of the Franco-British attack on that day, they set off the explosion which formed that great crater that we're looking down here, very often known as the Loch Nagar crater, the hole of glory. Incredible story that, the Welsh miners digging that excavation, quiet as they could so they couldn't be heard, because the Germans had listening technology available to try and hear what, if they could check out whether or not anybody was tunneling underneath them.
Inside the magic 50 kilometres now, and this is where the riders saying the race could take on a different shape if the rain falls and the wind continues to blow. Both is apparent right now with these constant changes of direction. You just never know when this race will split up. The second peloton, which includes Peter Kenyuk and Richie Porte from Team Sky, is over 3 minutes behind now.
Yes, I think their job done for the day. They just got to conserve as much energy as possible, but there's a lot of racing still to be done here. This is Steve Morabito at the back, getting himself into contact. He was just involved in a rather silly little crash at the back end of the main field. He was slipping back through the convoy of riders, and he just touched the curbstone at the side of the road and went down. And again, it was one of those accidents that the referees would probably say chute sans gravité. And still, it's the same big teams drag strip riding at the front of the main peloton.
So also sometimes that creates crashes because they relax, they start paying attention. But yeah, if that group probably is about 30, if you're position 50, yep, you might be caught out in a crosswind situation any minute.
Well, a helicopter here spiraling around the Basilica of Our Lady of Brébières, as we've just passed the Albert Museum there, which we created. You can go into that museum and you can descend into the trenches and follow the tracks to the actual trenches of that First World War, all preserved in that 1916 special salute to the War of 1916 in the museum.
Good old story about this basilica, by the way, Phil, because according to legend, a shepherd who was tending his sheep around here discovered this place where they used to actually graze, and on this sacred ground here they decided to erect the statue to the Virgin Mary with the baby Jesus.
Riders in the town now, and again the roads are still wet, but the rain has stopped at the moment. They'll appreciate that, I think.
Yep, and as you can see, as we start to get a little bit closer to the finish, there's that little bit more nervousness starting to appear as everyone wants to stamp their authority on the front end of the peloton. They're now heading in that southerly direction. This will be, I think, over the next 40 kilometres, we're looking at 20 kilometres heading down towards the south, and the last 20 kilometres will be heading pretty much due towards the west to come into downtown Amiens. And there is a pickup in the speed. We were cruising along before at probably less than 40 kilometres an hour, but there's a general acceleration now to in excess of 42.
Oh, for the first time this week on the Tour de France, they're running about 12 minutes behind the slowest possible arrival, they thought, in Amiens, but they have had this wind which has largely been not favourable, and when it has become cross, they've split off half the peloton, so there's a huge group of riders not with this leading group today. We've also early on lost the top French sprinter, Nacer Bouhanni. He will be undergoing x-rays probably as we speak now. He was taken away some hours ago to the hospital.
Pretty tough for his team as well, Team Cofidis, because the Cofidis company is actually based in the north of France. They're based just outside of Roubaix, and they all regard these stages pretty much as home stages. To lose the man who they specifically signed up to win flat stages in the sprint, that's a tough one for the team. They're going to have to remuster and find some morale for a change in tactics now, having lost one of the top sprinters that France has to offer.
Well, they've already issued a statement, actually, the team, saying how terribly disappointed they are with the accident today to Nacer Bouhanni. But there's nothing you can do about it. It is the sport of cycling, and like so many of the crashes today, it's happened on roads which really there shouldn't have been any problems, but that's the way it is. There's 189 cyclists left in the Tour de France of the 198 that started in that time trial in Utrecht last Saturday. Sky still defending the right-hand side of the road here. They may have worked out which way the wind's going to blow each time they make a turn. Wouldn't surprise me. Movistar still guiding Quintana safely at the front. You can see him in the centre. Last rider in the blue before the yellow, or the lime greenish colours there.
He's going to be a major threat for all of these riders if they can't put some time between him and them before we get down to the Pyrenees, because the way he was dominating the Giro d'Italia last year, he's going to be a scary proposition once we get down into the Pyrenees, and he's not that far behind. He's only conceded 2 minutes so far after what I thought was a very, very good opening individual time. So there's Tony Martin now. He's got himself stripped down for action, and I think he's going to be quite an integral part of the lead out. And this is the dangerous thing that happens if you're sitting at the back end of the group. All these little directional islands as you come in and out of these towns in Northern Europe nowadays. And if you're not attentive, just instead of looking at the rider in front of you, you've got to look 20 or 30 positions further forward. And once you start to see the riders moving around, just be ready to change direction, which is why it's always precarious in these damp stages as well, if you're not lined up properly coming into town. First time a little bit of a disorganisation of the teams. The team that seems to have the best hand of really staying locked together is that BMC squad of TJ Van Garderen. Van Garderen has finished twice in 5th place in the Tour de France, almost won himself the Alpe d'Huez stage in the 100th anniversary of the Tour, when the Tour de France stage went on Alpe d'Huez on 2 occasions.
So Martin continues now. I think he's probably got about 50-55 minutes to complete his first day in yellow. If it stays like this, Paul, he can't lose his yellow jersey today.
Well, his big advantage is he starts the day with a 12-second advantage over Chris Froome, 25 seconds over TJ Van Garderen. There are only 10 seconds available for the first rider to cross the finish line, and I doubt if it will be one of the major contenders. We get closer to the finish. I wonder which team is going to take the responsibility of winding up, because to have a good safe sprint you always actually want a very fast rapid run into town, stretching the main field out into a very long line, because if you don't have a quick run into the town, a lot of riders think they can rival the sprinters, and that's when it makes for a very dangerous and precarious sprint. So my gut feeling is it's going to be Ethics Quick-Step, but I don't think we'll start to see them stretching that line out of riders till around about 15 kilometers to go.
Well, the 3 sprinters who seem to be coming bang on to form this week is John Degenkolb, Andre Greipel and Peter Sagan. So Mark Cavendish knows he's going to have his hands full. He is the best sprinter. He has won 25 stages of the Tour, which is more than any other sprinter in Tour history. But by the same token, it's who's on form on the day. You're only as good as your last sprint. As they continue now to... This is Bob Jungels on the front here in his first Tour de France. This is a rider they are saying has a real future, but today he's 5 minutes and 26 seconds back on this second group. He's learning the ropes. He'll see plenty of more tours in the future. Absolutely.
This is all just really pretty much a question of survival mode now. There's Bryce Felu going through in the black and green jersey there of Sèche Bretagne. Thomas Voeckler in the black jersey of Europcar, keeping himself nice and warm. He's not enjoying his day out in the saddle, but he was caught very much at the back of the group. There's Peter Kenyuk in the red, white and blue, British national champion for the 2nd year in a row.
Yeah, these boys are riding to the... Oh, there's been a massive pile up here as we go back up the road. My goodness me, again a touch of wheels. Let's see if we can see that once more. Right in the centre of the field. Riders falling off because of the glacial road surface there.
I'm just having a quick look to see where that accident happened. And it's all of a sudden just touches of brakes and a bunch of riders going down and all of a sudden locking themselves up.
And it must be like an ice rink out there. The way those riders fell down just then. That's Pozzato again in the crash, 157 here.
Thibaut Pinot's involved in that crash.
Stefan Kruijswijk.
Well, it was just a touch of brakes, and it must have been extremely slippery on the road, because that touch of brakes and a lot of riders going down. Once again, poor old number 21, Thibaut Pinot. He didn't have a great day on the cobbles yesterday, lost himself a huge chunk of time. So psychologically, he's not going to be looking forward to the next couple of days.
No, it looks as though Pozzato here is quite hurt as he walks around.
Matteo Tossato going down there as well, one of the big helpers of Team Tinkoff Saxo, and that's not going to be too good for Peter Sagan when it comes down to the sprint. Again, just one of those crazy crashes, Phil, and all of a sudden, just watch it one more time where one rider goes down on the right-hand side there, then as everybody else tries to touch their brakes, they just can't control it and they just slip.
I think it's just fortunate we had all the crash barriers happen to be here at this point. It's happened right under the 25 kilometres to go actual banner there, and so that's why the barriers were put down. The road was like a skating rink with riders falling. As they just touched the brakes, they were down.
Well, that's Thibaut Pinot there, number 2 in the line of riders from for FDJ. And just a very, very crazy sprint, and he's going to have to get himself back into shape. He's lost a huge chunk of time so far. He really is not enjoying his opening week in the Tour de France. And there's still 1 or 2 riders standing at the side of the road. There's Matty White there, having a quick chat with one of his riders.
This rider is, again, the thing is that these riders from Orica Green Edge have been caught out every time. It's the luck of the draw, I know, but they've been so unlucky here. Just trying to get back into the action here is Matteo Trentin. He was in the fallers for Etixx, and he wants to get back up to the lead as fast as he can.
Bear in mind, Phil, Matteo Trentin, that rider there with the 7 on his number from Etixx Quickstep, he's the rider who handed his bike across to Tony Martin yesterday and allowed Tony Martin to get the victory of the stage, but also to get the yellow jersey.
What is Thibaut Pinot thinking now? This cannot be his tour. He's had such bad luck. He was in trouble in the cobbles yesterday, had to stop twice from the mechanical problems. He started the day over 6 minutes behind. He was 3rd in the Tour de France. There's another look, and they really did plough into that crash barrier there.
Yep, crazy crash, and taking down another 20 riders or so. And you can see the one rider at the back from Bretagne Sèche Environnement, he really did slip down quite hard. I think that was Bryce Felu.
Well, sorting themselves out, and hopefully will continue. The race has not applied any pressure. Now, that's the agreement, of course. They're not going to try and take advantage of the bad luck of the situation. They've continued. If anything, they've slowed down here to try and see how many riders can rejoin at this big group at the front. Already Pinot's docking lost a minute in that crash. He's got to cross that gap.
Yeah, well, Pinot, his teammate up alongside him, Ladagnou, is the rider trying to pace him back into this group this afternoon, and he's certainly going to lick his wounds tonight. He's catching another small group of riders, 2 or 3 riders just in front of him. Everybody scrambling to try and get back into contact before we make that right-hander and start to line up for Amiens, which is now beginning to tower in the distance.
You see, look at all the gaps there. They've still got a bridge here. A long, long straight road yet again. Another straight road. Slowly but surely a group of cyclists rejoin. There's no effort at the front.
And how strange is that, Phil? Because when you look at the finishing straight out here from the commentary position, the road is almost dry, and it just really is quite a shame that the road has got that little skim of moisture over the top of it. And those white lines when you ride a bike in Europe are very, very slippery.
This is Bram Tankink at the back for the Lotto Jumbo team. He's coming back safely. He still wants some service, but at least he's got back to the pack, and now he can relax a little bit while he sorts out whatever problem he's got with his bike. This is the first group of fallers are safely back. Thibaut Pinot still has to bridge a minute. Here he comes. He's the second of the riders with the blue tops to their jerseys as they slowly but surely now get themselves back into the action.
South African national champion just up there on the right-hand side, Jans van Rensburg.
Yeah, and he's been, Jacques Jansen van Rensburg has been doing a good ride today to be in that front group, and he's going to get back in it now. Strong man that he can sprint too, by the way, but whether he'll feel like doing that at the finish today, that's something else. Hope they'll dry a little bit as we continue.
One of the Yates brothers involved in that accident just a few moments ago, Adam Yates, but looks to me as if he's got himself safely back into the pack. There he is, number 108.
I thought it was 109, but I don't know. If it well, it's definitely a Yates brother. We're okay in that respect. They are the first twins from the UK to ride in the Tour de France, Simon and Adam. And we really need his mum alongside us for these commentaries now, because it is difficult to tell the difference between the two of them. They are identical.
Little bit of nervousness now, a little bit of acceleration inside of 20 kilometres to go, and still waiting in the wings over on the right-hand side, Etixx Quick Step. And although we don't talk about them having an overall contender, they've got Rigoberto Urán, the Colombian climber. He sits nicely in the overall standing, 7th overall, Phil, at 46 seconds. But again, I think he will sacrifice himself just a little bit for his teammates on today's stage. Well, this is the Australian monument, the Australian national monument to the men who lost their lives at Villers-Bretonneux. And a lot of people asked for all the Australian supporters to turn up here and support the Australians. 11,000 Australians are buried in this cemetery here.
Yes, and in all 46,000 died in the World War I as they defended the Western Front in 1918. And don't forget that the Australians and the Kiwis, the Anzacs, who came, they were both fairly new countries 100 years ago, and here they were fighting for us in Europe.
Well, as we look down on this monument, it was one of the last great memorials to be built to the British Empire and Commonwealth soldiers on the Great War, which was built right here on the Western Front. The memorial was inaugurated by King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. So Edvald Boasson number 211, with his Norwegian flag and Norwegian national champion, MTN Quebecer, says he loves the mentality of the team. He enjoys riding for MTN Quebecer and likes the fact that the team is a heart that really does have a soul. That rider there now, back to the front. Keeping it nice and high. You see why they're picking up the pace now is, as I mentioned just a little bit earlier, it just makes it that little bit safer when you start to charge into town. And you really want to start to stretch it out. Peter Sagan there, he's doing a lot of work this afternoon. Peter Sagan in that white jersey, and just making sure that he replaces his teammate Alberto Contador up to the front. It was Daniel Tekla-Heimanot just caught out a little bit in the crossfire there as he slips away. And BMC Racing, well, they are riding here as they used to ride for Cadel Evans, the Australian who won the Tour de France. And now they're riding for an American on their squad, TJ Van Garderen. Next banner these riders are going to start to see is the 15 kilometers to go. That's Louis Vestre looking over his shoulder, looking for Vincenzo Nibali as they come now into the small town of Fouillois. That's at 17 kilometers to go. Occupied in August 1914 and relieved in 1918. As we now, it's always a bit scary when you start to see these little corners now and those white pedestrian crossings. They're a very thick layer of paint on the roads, and just with that moisture over the top, they're always it always makes your heart to jump up into your throat when you see one of those in front of you. Once you get off it, then you feel that little bit more comfortable. 16 kilometers to go, 10 miles of racing left. Now we can start to see the teams of the sprinters are starting to show themselves. You've got the black and white jerseys. That's the white jerseys with the black jersey with a white strip down the middle. That is Giant Alpecin. They are getting themselves ready for what they hope will be a John Degenkolb victory this afternoon. Still struggling to get it back in contact. This is number 21, and this is Thibaut Pinot. He's got a couple of teammates with him to pace him back into the main field. He doesn't want to lose more time on a day like today. One more little traffic circle roundabout at 15 kilometers to go now as we start to line up for the finish in Amiens. Normally in the past it's always been a day for the sprinters. Mario Cipollini was the winner here back in 1999. This is Thibaut Pinot. Pinot has lost a couple of big chunks of time. He's 30th in the overall standings, already 6.5 minutes back. He doesn't want to throw any time away on a day like today. He's just got himself up there behind the red car, and that of course is the car of the race referee, whereas this is the concentration on the front end of the pack.
Left of our picture now, pushing the riders all over to the right of the road. These are accident-prone situations when this happens. Tony Martin and Mark Cavendish are trying to repay each other the favourites. Yesterday, Mark ensured and helped Tony Martin get yellow. Today is Tony Martin, knowing his yellow jersey will be safe till tomorrow, going to try and do the same now for Cavendish.
Well, Cavendish was talking a very confident game this morning. He knows how to sprint at the end of races like this. You can just see Cavendish there behind his teammate Mark Renshaw. He's the last rider in those Ethics Quick Step riders in the black shoulders, a white jersey with a little bit of a blue strip around the middle. The next line out there is led by Michael Rogers. Michael Rogers, not even a thought of his own glory in a race like this for the Tinkoff Saxo Australian rider. All he's thinking about is making sure that Alberto Contador is safe at the front end of this peloton.
And the man on great sprinting form is Andre Greipel. He wears the Sprinters Green Leaders jersey. He's never done that before. He's proud he's got it this time around. And he has just been moved up towards the front as well by his Lotto team.
Well, I told you a few moments ago, Phil, that the wind had dropped on the finishing line. Well, I'll change my plan again because it's become a rip-roaring headwind now. If you remember going back to that sprint finish into Zeeland, Mark Cavendish made his excuse that he was left trying to sprint into the wind a long way out from the finish. Well, he's going to have to bide his time here this afternoon. I'm pretty certain he won't make the same mistake twice. But Arnaud Demar, who I just spotted there for the FDJ, he was born just down the road from here in Beauvais and regards himself very much as what the French like to call the Régional de l'Étape. Watch out for him in the white jersey with the red and blue on it from FDJ.
Well, he's one of the sprinters that is left now. The sprinters in this race are really all here this year. Alexander Kristoff had 18 wins this year. Cavendish has had 13. Greipel has had 10. And Port has had 9. Port is not here in this group, but the others are in this group. This could be a clash of the Titans. Well, now Team BMC have ridden brilliantly all week and have got TJ Van Garderen up into third place, is now driving the race at the front. Jens Voigt, it seems to be BMC who are taking over.
I think they just want to play it safe and keep TJ in the best possible position. But you can see they drag race each other. Now it's Team Asana coming to the front. But just before I saw Team Quickstep getting ready. There he come on the top of the screen there. Just moving forward now to get Tony Martin in a safe position and also leading out Kev. And having a strong headwind like that on the finish line, you do not want to be alone in the sprint with 150 or more to go. You only want to hit the front at 150 meters to go. So the lead out train will have to work a little longer than usual to lead out the sprinter as long as he can.
Jens, it's always very complicated on stages like this. So, you know, when you've got to the team of the men who want to win this bike race overall, mixing it up with the sprinters teams, it's always a bit precarious, and that's always recipe for disaster.
They definitely have to have a clear discussion in the team meeting and go, okay, what are we going to do? Defend yellow or do the sprint? It's hard to do both, so maybe the safest is Tony take care of himself and the rest of them goes for the lead out for Kev. If you want to defend both, you might lose both. So it's a tricky call always.
Well, we're going to find out in the next 5 miles to the finish now. That second bunch, by the way, has now passed through 8 minutes and 20 seconds back.
Lots of manoeuvring and lots of movement in this main peloton right here as everybody's looking for their little position, their own space in this main field. There's Joaquim Rodriguez over to the left. He's had quite a comfortable day as the leader of the King of the Mountains competition. Just at the bottom there in the white jersey with the red spots on it. There's Tony Martin. The thing is, Tony Martin, I have a feeling, will try and ride this afternoon as part of the lead-out train for Mark Cavendish. He's done that so many times in the past, and Tony Martin has got huge horsepower. Everybody knows that. Look at the face of Nicholas Roach there, wide open, trying to get as much air as possible in there. He looks back. It's always a bit precarious and dangerous when you get riders like this looking back over their shoulders. If there's a movement in front of you, that's another way when the crashes can happen.
Well, still keeping their leader TJ Van Garderen safe is the Team BMC here, and so to the same now for Movistar and Sky. Ethics seems to have lost a bit of position here, Paul. They've been pushed down the back.
I think they're just waiting. That's Kinziato doing the big turn on the front for BMC Racing. Again, it's a question of supremacy here as Tinkoff Saxo are starting to wind it all up. You know, I think Jens was quite right when he told us a few moments ago, you've got to keep the firepower right down towards the end. With it being a slightly headwind finish, they want to, if they want Mark Cavendish to go better than he did when he finished into Zeeland, they want to put him into the last 200 metres with only about 180 to 200 metres to go in the sprint down towards the end. He and Mark Renshaw have worked very, very well together over the last few years, and Mark Renshaw has been an integral part of those 25 stage victories that Cavendish has had so far, so they'll want to keep the firepower in the back of their pocket to the last couple of kilometres.
It'll do that. And now we've got the team of Alberto Contador. He's the third man in the line of these guys in the lime green colours. And Chris Froome himself in the black there, having to push the wind himself now as he tries to get back onto his teammate's wheel.
Well, it's still the teams of the overall contenders. Look at those hand signals there coming from Movistar. They're making sure that they look after Nairo Quintana, keeping him comfortable to the front. That's him there, number 51. And in fact, he's in front of Alejandro Valverde. But I have to say that Nairo Quintana has ridden at the front on all of these flat stages so perfectly so far. I have a feeling MTN Quebec on the left-hand side in the black and white jerseys. They're looking after their man, the sprinter from Norway, Edvald Bosenhagen.
I tell you what, Edvald is going really well, and Tyler Farrar, a former stage winner here, the American, is now the lead-out man for Bosenhagen today, and he's got him right up there at the moment. So it could be an interesting result, because yesterday Bosenhagen was coming close, but Tony Martin in the end had daylight himself between everybody else. 47 is Peter Sagan. He's just staying there coolly. The green jersey is Andre Greipel, waiting for the moment to move forward. They've still got 6 kilometres. They're not too worried yet.
Yeah, 96, looking for the back wheel of Mark Cavendish was, in fact, Alexander Kristoff. And trying to bump Kristoff off the wheel was Rigoberto Urán. Splits up and comes back together again, just like peeling an onion.
Well, that's the first big roundabout safely negotiated, as the riders now head to a couple of roundabouts here.
Well, it looks to me as if...
This is the second roundabout after we cross the freeway there.
Yep, this is the second roundabout, two bolted pretty much together. We'll go through 5 kilometres ago, then there's one more roundabout where the race can go on either side at 4.5 kilometres to go, and then they've got a big long stretch of 1.5 kilometres before they've got a very fast sweeping left-hand bend at about 2 kilometres left to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tyler Farrar is doing a good job there. He's actually keeping Bosenhagen in with a good shot at the moment.
I just keep looking at the flags here on the finishing line, Phil. They are almost straight out. It's almost as if there's a massive big wind just coming through. You're going to have to be very, very careful, very patient in your opening up of the sprint, because this wind is so violent. If you start the sprint as Mark Cavendish did into Zeeland at 350 metres to go, you will be riding as if you're riding into a brick wall. There's Geraint Thomas now with the Union flag around his shoulder. He isn't thinking about a stage finish for himself. All he's thinking about is keeping Chris Froome nicely positioned at the front end of the line.
He's the rear guard, while at the front we've got Ian Stannard doing the work for Team Sky at the moment. Instead of a little change of partnership there now, but they're keeping Froome in the middle.
Two teams, we could see all the overall contenders teams are in the middle of this main field. There's Robert Hessink in the white shoulders there of Team Jumbo, but on the left-hand side, still waiting. Look how nervous Kwiatkowski is in the white jersey, the world champion. He's shouting instructions to the other riders in the Ethics Quick-Step line. He's actually calling the tune like the chief of the orchestra at the moment, waiting for the moment, saying, right, you guys get out of the way, we're going to get this organised.
Well, he's decided to change at the front. He's put a new pacemaker up there, but Saxo Tinkoff have come across and cut him out on this smaller roundabout. They've all gone round it quite safely. They've gained quite a march at the front over the group on the back, which put Trek Factory at a disadvantage there.
You see why it's so important to pick the right line around some of these roundabouts. You can start the roundabout in top position, then the next minute you're halfway down the main field. Also making an appearance now in about 4th or 5th position in that white jersey at 4 kilometres to go is Peter Sagan. He's been very consistent so far. He's been knocking on the door of a stage victory.
Well, as we watch this at 3.8, the Australians will be pleased to know that Michael Matthews, who's suffered all day just off the back of the race with his injuries, has been announced as the most aggressive rider of the stage, and that's a tribute to the fact that he struggled through to the finish today. So well done to Michael there. As we pick up the action now, 3.5 kilometres out, the yellow jersey of Tony Martin. Now, once we're through 3 kilometres, Martin will get the time of this group if there was an accident, so he'll be safe and in yellow in 0.3 of a kilometre for today. Then they can concentrate on the win.
MTN Quebecer over on the left-hand side, but look how organised on the right-hand side. You've got a big, long line of Ethics Quickstep world champion Michael Kwiatkowski, yellow jersey Tony Martin lining up. Just behind them, you've got Mark Renshaw. The last rider in that line of riders is Mark Cavendish, and hovering on Mark Cavendish's slipstream is Alexander Kristoff in the red and white jersey, the big Norwegian. 18 victories so far this year.
Well, it's a long time since I've seen a world champion in his year of reign work so hard for teammates, but that's the way it's been with Kwiatkowski this year. He's done it on a daily basis. 2.9 kilometres to go. The yellow jersey is now safe on the shoulders of Tony Martin under the rules for tomorrow, as MTN Quebecer are setting up at the front. How this African team has settled into its first Tour de France as Tyler Farrow drives at the front. They're thinking of the Norwegian champion Bosenhagen.
Well, this is how the lead-out train works. Look at this. Kwiatkowski, job done. World champion slipping off as we can start to see on the other side now, the right-hand side. Giant Alpecin trying to lead out their man, John Degenkolb. But they're leading Tony Martin in the yellow jersey, doing a phenomenal work around that corner, keeping, again, supremacy on the shoulders of Ethics Quickstep.
He knows now he's safe in yellow. He can now apply the second part of his day, and that's to set this up as an early pacemaker for Mark Cavendish, who sits 4th in the line. So far, so good. But remember, I don't think Cavendish can move till 150 to go because of the wind.
Well, he can't, but you want one man to make a massive big lead out like this for as long as possible. Remember how in the last kilometres yesterday, Tony Martin jumped away like this to get himself the stage victory. Well, he's going to put a similar kind of effort, but they're now being challenged. The little flick of the wrist there was an indication, I'm losing power. The power's going out of this. We're handing over supremacy now to Giant Alpecin, who are looking after their man, John Degenkolb. And right in the middle in the green is Andre Greipel.
Greipel has got onto the wheel of John Degenkolb at the moment and has just been samaged out a little bit there as they're running down a very good straight road. A sprinter's delight. Just below the picture is the 1 kilometre kite. The sprinters are coming to the front.
This is the moment when you start to panic. I don't want to get boxed in. I've got to find the door open here. And again, they've still got 3 riders from Ethics Quickstep. The second rider in that line is Mark Renshaw. These 2 riders work very, very well together. But the control is currently on the shoulders of Giant Alpecin. They're looking after Degenkolb. Look at this now. You can start to see them winding a little bit up. Mark Cavendish is up into second position. He's going to wait for the move that will come from his own teammate. He's lost the wheel of Mark Renshaw. Renshaw's 2 riders in front of him.
Marcel Seberg is leading out here. Greipel is losing ground here to this pace. And we've got Renshaw, then we've got Cavendish. And it looks as though Greipel may find himself in a difficult position here. And the man freelancing around is Alexander Kristoff, trying to find a way through. He's the man who's won 18 races this year on the right of the road now. 500 metres to go. And Mark Cavendish, just look who was coming, and he saw it was Kristoff. Now Renshaw is still leading out, but they're running out of men. Ethics Quickstep again are running out of men. Kristoff is in a perfect position. Renshaw has lost track of Mark Cavendish, who is on the right behind Edward Bosenhagen. And it's Kristoff going for the line this time. As he winds it up, Cavendish trying to open up the sprint here. Cavendish coming on the outside now. It's going to be desperately close as he runs up to the line. Kristoff leading towards the line. Greipel coming with a rush on the left of the road. Andre Greipel in green has just got his second stage win, and he's going ahead in that green points jersey. He is on the tour of his life.
Well, I tell you one thing, that was unbelievable. You know, it all got very, very confusing. Look how far back that Andre Greipel came from. Mark Cavendish is opening up the sprint as he has done so many times in the past. But watch the man in the green. Looks over to say, yeah, I've got this one. I've got the turbo whistling here this afternoon. Look at Sagan, though. Sagan comes up very quickly to pip them all and get himself second place. But Andre Greipel is the man of the moment.
Well, sprinters all. Sagan second, Mark Cavendish third, Christophe in fourth as they came to the line. Degenkolb a little bit at sea in the centre with those dark glasses on there. Wow, that was a pure sprinter. What a win.
Yep, look at the face there of Andre Greipel as he crosses the line, a win number 2.
Whoa. Stop.
Yep, little bit of confusion and excitement there. Looks for his teammates. They've done the big lead out. Tony Galopin, the first man there to come up alongside and give him the congratulations. Cavendish lost the wheels going through there in the confusion. This man bided his time, but did you see just how far back that Andre Greipel came from? Robbie McEwen. Well, a chance there. Look down there at the cathedral. There is a quick confirmation. Greipel, Sagan, Cavendish, Christophe and Edvald Boasson-Hagen, John Degenkolb, Arnaud Demar, Brian Coquart and Greg van Avermaet. Sprinters, everyone.
A great result, and Boasson-Hagen there in fifth. Well, a sprint all, Paul. They all released. Etex seemed to have it right, but that rush by Giant Alpecin threw them out of the system a little bit there. And again, Cav has shown he's got great application, but you can't recover from that situation.
But I'll tell you one thing, look at the speed that Andre Greipel produced over the last meters, and also Peter Sagan, who many people say is not one of the great bunch sprinters. He's Mr. Adaptability, but the speed that he came up there and that lunge for the line is keeping him very, very close to Andre Greipel in the green jersey sprint competition. But all of those riders, Phil, in the top 10, top sprinters. Quick glimpse down there at the Perret Tower, topped by glass, which marks out the hours with a coloured luminous display that increases its height by around about 6 meters. This modern cube is made from an innovative material of reactive glass, which is installed on the tower's topmost points. There's no real change in the overall standings. Tony Martin still leads the race by 12 seconds.
Welcome to stage 6 of the Tour de France. This is Matthew Keenan with you in Le Havre. And for what will be a most welcome sight for the peloton, the sun is shining brightly. Continues to lead the race overall. His buffer on Chris Froome is 12 seconds. It's then TJ Van Garderen at 25 seconds, followed by Sagan and Galopin. Van Avermaet in 6th, Rigoberto Urán in 7th, Contador is 8th. Green jersey for the points classification, that belongs to Adrian Greipel. Greipel has a 32-point buffer over Peter Sagan. Rodriguez, he leads the King of the Mountains classification, but there haven't been any big decisions in that competition as yet. Peter Sagan, the white jersey, 46 seconds ahead of Warren Barguil. It's then Nairo Quintana. Stage 6 in the race makes its way into Normandy. Abbeville through to Le Havre, 191.5 kilometres. There are 3 climbs on this stage, each of them category 4. As always, the one intermediate sprint, but it is an uphill battle through to the finish line. The stage today is anything but flat, and as you saw from the course map and profile, lumpy with crosswinds to be expected as they head towards the coast and into Normandy. 2 Germans, they've starred so far, 3 stage wins between them, and they're the leader of the 2 major classifications. So 5 stages so far, Germans having won 3 and leading 2 out of the 4 classifications. Quick start this morning, or this afternoon I should say, it was just after midday, to get the breakaway established, and we now have 3 riders off the fronts. Here they are, the man at the back, the Eritrean, Daniel Tekle-Hamanot. He's the best placed rider from this contingent of 3 off the front, but he's almost 27 minutes behind the yellow jersey of Tony Martin. The red colours for the Cofidis team, that is Kenneth van Bilsen, Belgian cyclist, on debut at the Tour de France. And this is Perique Cumier, the Frenchman, who for the third time has got himself into a breakaway. At one point their advantage was out to 11.5 minutes. It's now starting to slowly be reeled in, and it's back down to 9 minutes and 41 seconds. We're just on 142 kilometres remaining. It was anything but a calm day yesterday. In fact, many of the riders declaring that yesterday was the most difficult stage of this year's race. And that is despite the fact that we spent a long time seeing the peloton apparently just cruising along fairly gently, but they were doing. If you have just joined us, breakaway group of 3. They've been off the front since the start. Tekla Hamanot is the rider who sits at the front. In the middle in the green colours of Europcar is Cumier, and at the back in the red colours of Cofidis is Van Bilsen. The Cofidis team, they came here hoping that Nacer Bouhanni would be able to deliver stage success. Unfortunately, Bouhanni, yesterday, his third crash in 10 days, and his only crashes of the season, has abandoned the race. He abandoned on the stage yesterday. He's on his way home, and he's starting to rebuild for the second half of the season. And I suspect that we'll see him at the Tour of Spain. Into the town of Dieppe. We're not too far away from the Côte de Dieppe, and it will be first of 3 categorised climbs on today's stage. Our 3 leaders just about to hit the bottom of this Category 4 climb. Europcar in the break today with Cumier. His third attempt in a breakaway at this year's tour. But they really hold out hopes today for Brian Coquard to be able to win the stage. We saw a fair bit of Brian Coquard yesterday, particularly early on in the rain. He crashed twice yesterday, but still managed to pick himself up and finish in 8th position on the stage. And Brian Coquard, who's current world champion on the track, incidentally, in the Madison, he has declared that this is a stage that he's had on his mind for a long time, and he likes the uphill finish. So they start the climb. Van Bilsen is the rider who sits at the front. A Belgian with a French team in his first Tour de France, and the first time we've really had a chance to see him and mention his name. And the majority, the remainder of the stage, they race along the coast. I'm sure they'll all be pretty pleased that the weather conditions today are calm. It can get nasty in this part of the world. We're in the Normandy region today. And the port of Dieppe, which is the second largest, or third largest, I should say, in France. The second largest is Le Havre, which we're going to for the stage finish, and the largest is Marseille. Cumier setting the tempo at the front for the breakaway group of 3. And Tim Quebecer with Tekla Hamanot in the break today. They had Bosenhagen finish 5th yesterday, but the Norwegian national champion, he said the original plan was to try and lead the sprint out for Tyler Farrar. But the American was involved in a few of the crashes. Although he was there at the finish, he was involved in a few of the falls and said, Edvald, it's for you today. So Edvald took up the running and he managed to finish in 5th position yesterday. But today's stage finish is very similar to the one that Bosenhagen won in 2011. His first ever stage victory in the Tour de France. That was to Les Eaux, and it was Matt Goss in 2nd place and Thor Hushovd in 3rd. So despite the fact that MTM Quebecer have Tekla Hamanot in the breakaway today, sitting in 3rd position of the 3 men off the front, don't discount Edvald Bosenhagen for the stage finish. He's had a 6th and a 5th place finish on the past 2 days, Edvald Bosenhagen. Very much looking forward to the conclusion of today's stage. as we take a look at the ports racing through the Normandy region today. We head to Brittany over the next few days, and Preet Cumier, who's in the breakaway today, is from the Brittany region. This bridge named after Jean Angot, who was the governor of the city from 1494 through to 1547, so he had quite a long stint. Here is Ryder Hagedal once again sitting down towards the back. It looked as if he was running alongside Nathan Huss, who we saw quite a bit of yesterday, Nathan Huss. We also saw a fair bit of him on stage 3, as they were looking to try and set up the stage on stage 3 for Dan Martin, who finished in 4th position on that stage, a stage that really suited the Irishman. It's warm, but it's not quite swimming weather. But the coast will provide stunning scenery throughout the remainder of the stage. For the Orica Green Edge team, as the race continues for them, we'll come back to that in a moment, as they're almost at the top of the climb. Tekla Hamanot, as suspected, this has been the mission of the day, and he collects the single point across the top ahead of Van Bilsen. Van Bilsen with nothing to show for the effort. Tekla Hamanot, he collects 1 point. There are 2 more climbs to come, and if he can do the same, if he can win both of them, he'll be in the King of the Mountains jersey at the end of the stage. This is the Chateau of Dieppe that we're now getting a chance to take a look at. And the oldest part of this chateau is said to have dated back to 1360. It's the Western Tower. It was occupied by the English for around about 40 years or so, from 1435. Now, Ryder Hagedal at the back of the race in the green colours is almost becoming as reliable for being at the rear end of the peloton when things are calm as what Thomas Voeckler is. The Frenchman Thomas Voeckler, he's really made a name for himself as either at the back or off the fronts. He's had an extraordinary career though, Thomas Voeckler. He has got a lot to be proud of. I wonder what happens with it though at the end of the season. He's 36 years of age now, Thomas Voeckler. He's out of contract with the Europcar team, which is a team that's looking for a new sponsor. His agent might be having a busy few weeks throughout the Tour de France to try and find him a new home for season 2016, if indeed the veteran Frenchman decides to go on. 2 Italians at the front in the Tinkoff colours, that was Ivan Basso. In the red colours for BMC Racing is Gianpaolo Caruso. This is Van Summer in the white colours, all bandaged up for AG2R Le Mondial. Things still going okay for AG2R Le Mondial. Their main interest for this year's race is Jean-Christophe Perrault, the man who finished in 2nd position last year. He struggled a little on stage 2. He survived on stage 4 across the pavé, and he sits in 19th position at 2 minutes and 19 seconds down. A few camper vans on the side of the road. We haven't seen too many of those as yet. A quick descent, and then it's on to the next climb of the day. The Côte de Pourville-Chênaire, which again is a category 4 climb. It's 2 kilometres in length and 4.5% the average gradient. So almost a carbon copy of the climb that they've just moments ago gone over the top of. The stunning cliffs of Normandy, rising in some spots up to 120 metres above sea level. And they look out across the other side, and over the horizon are the white cliffs of Dover. Starting to see a few of the camper vans appear on the side of the road at this year's Tour de France. There'll be plenty of those once we do get down to the mountains. At this part of the tour through Normandy, it's mainly local holiday makers. But once we get down to the Pyrenees and the Alps, we'll see them from all nations across the globe. Plenty of them having hired the camper vans to enjoy the tour. George Pryder leads the main peloton across the top of the climb at 4 minutes and 36 seconds behind the breakaway of 3. Pace needed. A little bit of cat and mouse starting on the climb. Tekla Harmonot in second position. He sits on the wheel of Cormier, but he's watching Van Bilsen very closely. Van Bilsen, the Belgian, at the back. He's won one professional race in his career. That was the Grand Prix of Marseille at the beginning of last season. First time we've seen much at all of the Cofidis squad, with the exception of the injured Nassif Bouhanni, their sprinter on the side of the road. Sadly, Bouhanni abandoned the race yesterday. A chance to enjoy the white cliffs of Normandy once again. Tekla Harmonot has got himself to the back of this little group of 3. Van Bilsen now with the head on the swivel. 400 metres roughly to get to the top of this climb. Although suits would be okay today because it's reasonably cool. Hopefully we don't see too many of those once we get to the Alps, where it's sure to be hot. Van Bilsen a little nervous over the left shoulder. Cormier looks to be the spectator at this point. There's the finish line. Tekla Harmonot waits for the Belgian to go first. Van Bilsen goes. Tekla Harmonot responds. He needs this point to stand a chance of getting the King of the Mountains jersey. But the Belgian, has he got the timing right? No, he hasn't, because Tekla Harmonot was too strong in the end. He collects the points. He moves in an equal lead for the King of the Mountains jersey. 2 from 2 for Daniel. 1 to come. And the final throw to the line, it really was a sprint more so than a climb. He spent 2 seasons with the Orica Green Edge team, Daniel Tekla Harmonot. He spent the last 2 seasons with MTM Quebecer. A rivalry at the front of respect. Number 76 in the red colours at the back for Lotto Soudal. That's Adam Hansen. As Paul Sherwin referred to him yesterday, hard as coffin nails. They don't come much tougher than Adam Hansen. Confirmation, Tekla Harmonot collecting another point. So in the race for the King of the Mountains jersey, Rodriguez currently leads on 2 points, equal with Tekla Harmonot also on 2 points. But the Spaniard has the lead on a countback because he was the winner of stage 3. But there is 1 climb to come, another category 4 climb that's just inside the final 30 kilometres. If the break can survive till there and Daniel gets 1 more point, we'll see MTM Quebecer on the podium this afternoon, collecting one of the leaders' jerseys in the Tour de France.
With the times, if you're going to keep your bicycle factory in operation, and poor old Eddie broke his heart and had to succumb to the situation. 89 kilometres to go. We're in Saint-Valery-en-Caux at the moment for the leaders. And the peloton, no, it's all going according to plan. No point in rushing them down just yet at 4:25. The actual green jersey sprint, which will interest Greipel, Cavendish and Sagan and Degenkolb, etc., comes at 46 kilometres to go. So we've still got 42 kilometres before we get to that. This is Saint-Valery. What a lovely place.
Magnificent little seaside resort down there. The inhabitant known as Valerike. And the town centre was almost completely destroyed by bombing during the siege of the 10th to the 12th of June 1940, but was liberated by the Allied forces in September 1944.
Oh, what a great moment that must have been. As the peloton here looking at the golden corn.
Well, Phil, I'm just
I'm not good
wondering.
on my crops, Paul. I think it's corn. It might be wheat. I don't know.
I will put that down as wheat, I think, here this afternoon. By the way, just as a matter of interest, Daniel Tekla-Heimanot in the breakaways, the riders pick up that slight crosswind coming in off the ocean. I wonder if he's going to be inspired by the fact that racing on the other side of Europe at the moment in the Tour of Austria, one of the riders from MTN Quebec has just managed to win himself at stage 5 of the Tour of Austria. So
Wow,
there's a good
who
bit
was
of
it?
information. Van Snell. And he wasn't slow.
Van Sale, that's he's a good rider. He's only a youngster. He's too young to ride the Tour de France yet, but that is a brilliant result in the Tour of Austria for MTN Quebec, who are really making the way now in cycling at the highest level. First time in the Tour de France with a wild card. The promises they will be visible. They're proving that today with Daniel Tekla-Heimanot, and creating a lot of interest back in Africa. It's really coming out of South Africa, but they're using riders from other countries within Africa as well.
Well, he beat Dave Tanner and Rick Zabel into second and third place. He escaped inside of the last few kilometres. So good result, I think, for MTN Quebec.
And if Rick Zabel sounds familiar to you all, well, it was his dad, Eric Zabel, who used to win the green jersey in the Tour de France. And in fact, he still holds the record for stage wins in the Tour de France, which stand at 12. And Andre Greipel yesterday got his 8th, so he's going to challenge Rick's record.
He's right up there with 8, but it puts it into
Not
perspective.
Rick's,
Eric's. It puts it into perspective a little bit when you realise that Mark Cavendish, although everybody's playing down Mark Cavendish now, Cavendish has won 25 stage victories at the Tour de France, and of the sprinters, he's been the most successful. Only 2 riders in history have won more stages of the Tour de France than Mark Cavendish: Eddy Merckx and Bernard Hinault, and that, my friend, is quite a reference.
Looks like it's feeding time for the boys now, as we're seeing there. The white jersey of the world champion. He won it so well last year. He left a very select group of riders over the small hills in Ponferrada in Spain before the finish and held them off. That's why today a few people are also saying Kwiatkowski could be the man to show a clean pair of wheels to the rest of the race. He might well try to launch the yellow jersey and his teammate Tony Martin on that climb to the line today. He's worked very well for him all week. Long time since we've seen the reigning world champion work for somebody else to do well in the Tour de France. Again, the field are holding. It's moving slightly out. They've been distracted by the feed. Arrivé, 89 kilometres. Well, it's not quite right, but it's too late to move now. We're 86, in fact, from the finish.
It's on a number of occasions, but that I have not seen before. And hopefully those will not be the high voltage lines at the moment. Maybe they've taken a couple of the phases out for these gentlemen. It's starting to get just a little bit breezy on the run-in down towards the finish, and these riders are now starting to pick up this 15 to 20 kilometre an hour crosswind coming in off the shoulders. When they get down into Fécamp, it's also a very tricky run into the finishing line coming through the small town of Saint-Léonard, which is actually just on the outskirts of Fécamp, around about 3 or 4 kilometres outside. There are a number of very sticky right-hand and left-hand bends inside of the last 2 kilometres of the run towards the line. But there you can see, this really is some beautiful countryside that we're making our way through here this afternoon as we leave Saint-Valery behind.
Four minutes 56, they're pushing out to that 5-minute margin, just about 84 kilometres left to ride. We're just about 38 kilometres to the green jersey sprint of the day, and I think that is where the race will be altogether. There's no reason not to chase them down at this moment in time. It's distracting for the rest of the race if there's somebody up the road.
Yeah, well, they need to really get themselves organised. And by the way, that little sprint in Saint-Léonard, which is just outside of the small town of Fécamp, is, to me, slightly uphill. It's around about a 2-kilometre drag up to the summit. Maybe a little bit of a chance there for the sprinters like Andre Greipel to have a dress rehearsal of the finish.
Yep.
But these guys, now that the main field behind has slowly started to calm their ardour a fraction, this group has stretched its advantage out to the 5-minute margin once more. Kemener, well, he really has become the master of the breakaway in this early part of the Tour de France. He hails from Brittany. That's Daniel Tekla-Heimenot. Coming back to the story on Daniel Tekla-Heimenot, when he joined MTN Quebec in 2014, he was given a 2-year contract. And fingers crossed that that contract gets renewed for this year, because he was the first man to win a major title, a major jersey, a major competition for MTN Quebec when he won the King of the Mountains competition in the recent Criterium du Dauphiné, which is based very much in the Alps, and just goes to prove that he's an excellent climber. Fingers crossed that he's able to get the next single point available on today's stage. Well, we're now looking at 83 kilometres to go to the finish. That's around about 2 hours of racing. This is Chris Froome coming up to the front. Alongside him, his teammate Nicolas Roche. Roman Kreuziger just a little bit further back. The gap of the 3 leaders is now stretched out to 5 minutes, I think, because the peloton have realised there's still a fair amount of racing to do, about 2 hours to the finish, and I think they've decided to just wait before they really start to turn up the screws. The crosswinds coming in off the English Ocean, the English Channel, have not really been that violent for the riders, but I'm sure they will be bearing in mind that it could be important on the run in towards the finish. Reminder of the 3 riders in the leading group: Daniel Tekla-Heimenot, and he's the best placed rider in that leading group, and he is more than 26 minutes behind so far in the overall standing. So none of these riders in that leading group at all dangerous to the overall contenders. Froome making the best operation so far. He's in second place, just 12 seconds behind Tony Martin. Martin himself feeling very comfortable. He's got a strong squad, Etixx Quick-Step, and they could hold on to this lead for a number of days. And let's not forget, they're a very good team when it comes to the team time trial. And it may well be that Tony Martin extends his lead in the overall competition when we go through to the team time trial, because Etixx Quick-Step are extremely good at that discipline. Well, we're heading back now in a northwesterly direction to head back up towards the coast, and that's when they'll start to pick up that rather treacherous little wind again. It's not really massive, the wind this afternoon, 15 to 20 kilometres an hour, but it will always be on the rider's right-hand shoulder. And in fact, I keep looking out of the commentary position and the flags. They're really not fluttering as much as they were yesterday. Now then, here is a chance to look at that magnificent chateau that we're looking for just a little bit earlier. This is the chateau of Cany-Barville. The plans attributed to François Marceau, and it was built for the his great uncle at the time. Built in 1640 to 1646 at the request of Pierre Le Marnier, a member of the Rouen Parliament. It's currently owned by Laure Normand, who is the daughter of Count Antoine de Dreux. Chateau is very much in the Louis XIII style, made of stone and brick. The rectangular shape measures 10 by 45 metres. There's 3 levels, a total floor space of 1,300 square metres. It also contains a chapel, a water pump known as the water. Current owner lives. Really is quite magnificent. And in fact, in 2006, there was a carriage driving competition, which was organised by the Joan of Arc Carriage School. Peter Kenyuk, lunch for him, fast food, as we see the face of Thomas de Kent in the middle. Alex Dowsett there, bandaged up. He was involved in a little accident yesterday. Michael Schär on the left-hand side in the black and red jersey of Team BMC Racing. He's got the little Swiss flag around the middle. Behind him, his teammate Daniel Wiese, who is the current Swiss national road racing champion. And he, of course, 2 times a winner, actually, of the race across America, known as RAM. A competition that was also won by Jack Boyer, the team coach for Team Rwanda. Back with the 3 leaders, the gap's coming down now, and that's all really because of the acceleration now as we start to get ourselves just that little bit closer down towards the lineup for that next sprint, the sprint when it comes down through to Saint-Léonard. I don't think we've started to see an organised chase coming. It's just the general impetus of the main field starting to eat into that advantage, and the question is, will these 3 survive, and what is the man on the front going to do when we come to the final sprint point of the day? That is such an important point for him, because he's equal on points in the King of the Mountains competition to Joaquim Rodriguez, and I'm sure he has been dreaming about winning this final point of the day. He's been dreaming about getting that polka dot jersey for a long, long time. I always remember Barry Hoban, who won 8 stages of the Tour de France, telling me in my first tour, if you're going to make any effort in the Tour de France, make sure that it pays. And I think that's why Thomas Voeckler has realised here that he wasn't going to get across the gap, so don't waste too much energy. Come back on another day and look for a similar situation. Giant Alpecin all over the front. This is all for John Degenkolb. I think the word has gone back that this is not necessarily a sprint finish for the guys like Andre Greipel or Mark Cavendish, but this is certainly a John Degenkolb type finish. Carrizo is back on his bike and making his way back into the main field. A very quick and rapid chase by him. And lining up not too far away from us now will be the next strategic point on the day as we get a chance here. This is a very, very beautiful part of the coastline, and that little gap you can see there in the rock face there is known as the Needle, or the Arch of Aval. Very, very famous in this part of the world, and you might just have noticed the other piece of limestone sticking up. Well, that was the Belval Needle. There you can see, quite beautiful there, the Arch of Naval, and the Needle just over to the right hand side, and the small town just over to the left is in fact the town of Étretat, a little village nestling right in the high cliffs just over the port d'Aval. Beautiful geological formation there as we look down. These cliffs of Étretat are listed on some of the great sites by the Ministry of Ecology and Sustainable Development. Cretaceous limestone, white chalk and Sinayan flint. No other minerals are found elsewhere along the Sceaux coast. Look at that. The 3 successive arches, Port d'Amont, Port d'Aval. What incredible geological structures.
Remind me of the sisters down on the Great Ocean Road in Australia. We're looking now here at the riders in Normandy for virtually all of the day today. We did start in Picardy, and tomorrow we'll be racing into Brittany after the restart. As we're looking now at the area Paul Sherwin has just described to us, but it's because of the soft rock here. Unfortunately, it is eroding the coastline of France.
Yes, in some of the points along here, because of the bashing of the waves against the limestone deposits, it's receding by as much as a metre per annum. And that green down there might not be there in 10 years' time.
Well, I could say that will make 2 of us, but I'm not going to say that as we watch the helicopter nip along the coastline. At the moment, they may have to rethink about where they're going to place the 17th hole. As we now say, welcome to Normandy. The Normand down there, they've well thought that one through in time, and the helicopter knew. They're slightly over from the route of the Tour de France.
There's some Giant Alpecin. They're keeping a very close watch on the front here. You can see the legs of man. You might just have spotted down there, obviously supporting 2 riders in the Tour de France this year, Mark Cavendish and Peter Kenyuk.
1 minute 47 seconds the gap. It's just the 3 riders up front now. A few minutes ago, Thomas Voeckler, and he's on the far right of our picture there, got put back in his place. They chased him down, but it does look as though Daniel Tekla-Heimenot is going to have to worry about only 2 riders on this climb here, which is coming up, because he's still got, and they have too, 1 minute and 46 seconds, Paul. There's a real chance. Now, what do you think with the other 2 riders? Will they allow him? Because they've no interest in this competition.
Well, theoretically, they have no interest at all in this competition. But, you know, when you're a professional bike rider, it's all about making sure that you get the maximum out of a stage like this. He's proved to be the fastest in the first 2 sprints. But I would think in the position that he's in, Phil, he's ridden the Tour of Spain in the past, Daniel Tekla-Heimenot. He's going to be extremely nervous. This is a kid who is facing up to a dream that he's been thinking about for years and years. And it's just at the top of the next hill. So I don't know, he did not go for the intermediate sprint point at Saint-Léonard, and that went to Kemener, who was the first across that point ahead of Kenneth Van Bilsen. And I'm not sure whether they're going to allow him the chance, but he's not going to take the risk of making a mistake at that point. Daniel Tekla-Heimenot knows how important this is. He's a kid that just 1 month ago was the winner of the King of the Mountains competition in the Critérium de Dauphiné, which is a precursor, a warm-up race for the Tour de France, if you like. And he certainly knows how important this is for the history of the development of African cycling when he thinks about it. Eritrea, I'm sure, will all be on the edge of their seats. We're now looking at maybe 3 kilometers for the leaders. Giant Alpecin. Over on the right-hand side, you've got the red jerseys of Lotto Soudal. They're thinking about 2 chances of a victory today for them, of André Greipel. Can he make it 3 stage victories in this year's Tour de France, or will it be the Frenchman on their squad, Tony Galopin? The gap's 1 minute and 40, and that will get wiped out pretty rapidly, I would expect, as we come and have another quick look here at these beautiful cliffs once again of Etretat, as we make our way down there to the Arch of Aval.
We are getting so close now as we head around this beautiful coastline. These 3 leaders are getting close to the start of the climb. It is the last climb of the day. I've been discussing with Paul Sherwin if the other 2 will take pity and say, look, Daniel, it's a big moment for you, go ahead. Paul Sherwin isn't so sure that is what they'll do.
Well, I'm not sure it's a question of taking pity on him at all, but let's not forget, Phil, he was the dominator of the first 2 points when we went over the Côte de Dieppe. He got the win there. He was challenged by the rider from Cofidis at the Côte de Pourville. He proved to be the fastest on both occasions. You will have noticed that when he went through the sprint point at Saint-Léonard, he did not have a go for that sprint point, and he allowed the 2 other riders to go through. But they are professional bike riders. They're not going to make him a gift, and he will be very concerned about it, and he'll want to make sure that he gets his sprint right here, because this is a little piece of history for him, for the African continent, and of course for Eritrean cycling. 1.6 kilometers the climb, 344 feet above sea level, average gradient of 5.6%.
Well, Jens, we've made the climb. What's your opinion? Recently retired from the Tour. Do pros think this way? Will they allow him to take the point that makes history?
As far as I saw it so far developing in this breakaway, I'm pretty sure that the FDJ rider is not gonna go for the KOM. So really, all that David Tekla-Heimenot has to take care of.
Yeah, I think you mean the Cofidis rider.
I meant. I'm sorry for that. My mistake.
Yeah.
Mea culpa. So yeah, he only has to take care of Kenneth Van Bilsen. So
Right.
I believe he got a fair chance of actually do write history today.
There's pretty much a big wide boulevard as they drop down towards the coast. But for me, the 2 dangerous points are when they turn left onto the quay of Southampton and then turn inland to start the climb up towards the finish line. That's when it's going to be quite precarious. And that little chicane at 2 kilometers to go, well, I thought it was rather dangerous when I drove around it this morning.
Well, the onion formation around that one has gone round nicely. La Seine Maritime, and this is where the River Seine goes into the channel, and the river that goes through, of course, Paris. We've got to the other end of it now, and just look at the speed of these boys as they all have their own reasons for driving the charge at the front.
Well, the other thing as well, Phil, as you mentioned, the reason why a lot of the overall contenders are being very attentive at this point and getting it mixed up with the guys who want to win the stage is because it is, as far as I'm concerned, rather a hilltop finish, and there could be gaps in the main field. If somebody's tired halfway down the main field and they sit up and a gap appears in the main field, there could be a time split in the peloton, and you don't want to lose 10 or 12 seconds with a crazy move like that. That's why they're being so attentive on this run. In 44 kilometers an hour for the leader. In the main field, they're probably hammering along at around about 50 kilometers an hour, and every time they come into the big straightaways, they will have Van Bilsen in their sights.
Well, he's giving it his best shot, and good luck to him. Kenneth Van Bilsen, his very first Tour de France. This young man, as he piles on the pressure, and notice the boys in the chocolate-coloured jersey now getting in on the act, AG2R, because they got third place on the Huy with Alexis Villemeroz, a former mountain biker in the days of Peter Sagan, and now they've got great confidence he will get up the hill and convert.
Well, he beat Peter Sagan in the World Junior Mountain Bike Championships when he got himself a silver medal, and he's obviously a very good bikelander. I'm not sure that he'll handle this climb up here, but the team obviously have a lot of confidence in him. BMC Racing, and the only reason they're doing, well, in fact, there's two reasons. I forgot about it, Phil, because the Belgian journalists were talking about today's stage being the Van Havermaet. So Greg Van Avermaet is the man that they're trying to lead into a position, but that actually has a two-pronged advantage because they're also keeping TJ Van Garderen to the front under the peloton and out of danger.
Well, I can see the headlines if he wins in Le Havre, that's for sure, but he is a Belgian cyclist. This boy is not going to ease up. I think we can confirm he'll win that most aggressive rider prize, and he'll wear a red number tomorrow. It'll be the first prize he's won in the Tour de France. But the riders, you see that the speed is such now, they've got them in a long straight line, and quite frankly, this is the way they should go into town, because if they go into town as a compact bunch, these corners simply aren't wide enough.
Well, that's one of the main reasons for stretching the peloton out into a long line like this, because if you're in that long line of riders, it's a much safer approach to the finish line. Pretty impressive average speed there, 62 kilometers an hour for Van Bilsen, but if he looks over his shoulder, Phil, he's not got very much more than 250 meters advantage. There's the peloton just a little bit further back. Here they are, and they're right up alongside the English Channel. It's a long straight now down the Boulevard Albert and Boulevard François, and then it's the climb.
We're looking for 5 kilometers to go. Even the yachts are getting in on the act now. They're the leaders' jerseys floating around in the harbour as we race into the outskirts of Le Havre.
Look at this, Tony Martin right up towards the front end of the main field there in his yellow jersey. The speed for Van Bilsen, 60 kilometers an hour. It's probably 61, 62 kilometers an hour, that little bit further back in the main peloton.
Well, this is going what you call going down fighting. The Tour de France makes you find strength you never knew you had. 12 seconds is the spread. That's all it is now. The team leaders of the Tour, Team BMC, in those yellow helmets are leading at the moment. They've got a guy in Greg Van Avermaet who could possibly take this one out.
Well, a little bit of disorganisation now. It really is interesting to see that Mark Cavendish is floating around at the front end of this main field. You know, the amazing thing about Cavendish is when you don't expect him, when you least expect him to do something, all of a sudden he pops out of the bag. But BMC Racing have got a two-pronged attack here this afternoon. Look after TJ Van Garderen, who is high up in the overall standings, but also try and place Greg Van Avermaet to the front, because Van Avermaet has got that very explosive, punchy sprint that could pay on a climb like this.
Up comes the troops for Giant Alpecin. They're looking after John Degenkolb as he's on the inside in those black jerseys. Last man, the yellow jersey, and Ethics Quickstep are getting control of this race at the front. The team of Tony Martin and indeed Mark Cavendish. This man is still dangling at 3.6 to go, but the hill has got to destroy him. The hill is actually very steep. It's 7%.
Well, I tell you what, it's going to be a massive shock to this young man. It's one of those stages where you'd like to just put a hand out, a helping hand, and push him along just a little bit. He's very shortly going to take the nasty little sweeper to the left into the avenue of Southampton, and then another right and left-hand chicane to start to line himself up for the climb. And that climb is going to feel like a mountain for him, but in fact, as we see here, he's not quite going to make it.
Well, 3 kilometres to go, and he is swept up at Van Bilsen, who is in the lead today for 185 kilometres. Now, it's down to the sprinters, or is it down to the stayers, the men who can last the distance? Because Giant is second in line, but Mark Cavendish's team has got control of the bunch, and it's going to be a whole series of turns now.
This is the Rue de Paris now, as they come across a few little cobblestones thrown in just to make it interesting. Giant Alpecin all over the front. Tony Martin is up into third position. Cavendish is hovering around. There's Peter Sagan in the white jersey and the yellow helmet. They're right about to line themselves up, Phil, for the right and the left-hand chicane. It really is quite nasty. You've got to keep your hands away from your brakes. You touch your brakes and you'll slip right the way back down this line of riders.
Tony Martin would increase his overall lead if he were to win this, but the fact he is number 3 rider here, he's not riding for himself here. He's still looking who's on his back wheel. He's got the riders of John Degenkolb on his back wheel, but the pressure will stay on now and stop others closing up, because the corners are narrow. Once on the climb, strong men might move forward. Here's the first one. Look how narrow that is for 188 bike riders. It'll be followed by a lefty and a righty.
Well, Tony Martin up into second position. This is the left-hand bend now into the Avenue de René Courtille, and they're still lining up 2 kilometres to go. Ethics Quickstep all over the front end, but not far away in the second row. It's Giant Alpecin. Looking a bit further back there, you can see that white jersey with the yellow helmet. That is Peter Sagan. He's lined up. Cavendish is now up into third position on the wheel of his own teammate there, and that, of course, Tony Martin. Martin has the amount of power that could launch Mark Cavendish into a victory position today if he can hold on to the back wheel of Martin on the slopes of this climb.
Well, the hill is really, really hard, and I'm not sure these legs are going to lock up when these guys see the climb. They will have been told by management what it's like, but they haven't seen it, as they now start to move up on the other side of the road as well. The teams from Lotto and Cofidis are coming to the front. Are Cofidis going to spring the surprise after their man was swept up 3 kilometres out?
Geoffrey Soupe on the front there with the beard, and he's trying to launch himself alongside the Giant Alpecin. Riders looking over their shoulders. This is the start of the climb now, 1.2 kilometres to go. It'll start to feel like a massive big mountain. Moving around the outside, it's still the yellow jersey of Tony Martin. I can't see the green jersey of Andre Greipel anywhere at all. Moving on the outside now, it's Katusha there looking after their man, and that's obviously Alexander Kristoff. Look at the speed though, it is so slow at 1 kilometre to go. 35, well, it's 30 kilometres, 18 miles an hour is all the speed is. That's, oh, there's a crash!
Oh, there's a crash.
Martin!
Nibali is the first faller, the yellow jersey is the other faller. 2 of the leads, but they were inside the kilometre. They don't lose time. They can take the time to get off the ground. They get the time of the winner today. Let's have a look again. Bottom of your picture here. It was actually Tony Martin touched the rider from Europcar and ricocheted onto Nibali, but they do get the same time, so they won't lose time. Let's hope they're okay. Look at the traffic jam now, but what's happening at the front of the race as the riders continue?
Well, this is the accident at the back where there's now a massive big acceleration.
As they come up now, gritting their teeth, the riders try to break the line. Oh dear me, that does not look good news. Let's hope that Tony Martin is okay to ride tomorrow. He will still be the leader of this race. As the breakaway looked a little bit like might be Mark Cavendish trying to get away here. No, it's not, as they come up towards the line. The rider in white is Peter Sagan. It does level out over the top, and they're just about coming on to that level at the top at the moment.
Looks like Matteo Trantini is the rider from Quickstep who's made that move, and Peter Sagan is having to wait. But look at the move Rodriguez is going.
Well, they'll have to make the run now. There is quite a long run to the line here. There's still chance for the sprinters to have their say. But what a strange crash that was. This is Steibar, I think, who's gone clear here. He's riding in his first Tour de France. as he comes up now. The former world cyclo-cross champion Stybar comes up towards the line. An attack by Brian Coquard on the right of the road in the green. But it's all over. Stybar has got the victory for Etixx Quick-Step, but it's not a great evening for Etixx because the race leader is down on the ground at 800 metres. But Stybar has got the consolation prize for the team.
Well, that was a dramatic run in towards the finish. Once again, the Tour de France throwing up some crazy things. That's the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Tony Martin. Teammates are all up alongside him there. They've stopped to nurse him up, but the rules and regulations will say that if he has an accident inside of the final 3 kilometers, he will get the same time as the group that he's with. And I'm just looking there, that looks very much like Nairo Quintana. I'm wondering if he was delayed by that accident as well. We'll have to wait for the results.
No, here's Quintana here. He's just coming in now. But he must have been split up with the problems because the field was all together at that point. Now, this is designated a sprinter's stage, maximum points in the green jersey. Because of that, the referees can call time on the race at 3 kilometers out from the finish. The other rule is 1 kilometer, that always applies.
Yes, well, he does need to get on his machine and get up towards the finish line and finish the stage.
Well, there's the green jersey of Greipel, a long way down. But again, these riders will be given the same time because of the crash. Now look at this now. There's 3 teammates pushing the maillot jaune of the Tour home.
Well, he does not look in very good shape there, Phil. You can see there's Vincenzo Nibali. He went down in that accident as well. He seems to be riding up quite comfortably. Once we get the official timed results through, he will be given the same time as the group that he was with.
In the leader's yellow jersey. He now comes home and he will be obviously going straight off to hospital.
It's, how strange is that when you think about it? His teammate comes out of the pack and gets himself the stage victory, but it won't be a great moment of celebration for the team with that nasty accident to the man who started this race in the overall leader's jersey, Tony Martin. Hanging onto his shoulder like that is never a very good sign when you see a cyclist clutching his collarbone. So looking down now onto the port of Le Havre, just in the background there, the church of Saint-Joseph. This is the moment when Zdeněk Stybar had got himself the victory. He will not have known at this point of the injury that his teammate Tony Martin had a little bit further back. He took the advantage, he heard of the confusion and leapt out of the pack. This man must have thought he was going to get the victory. Peter Sagan, second place again for Peter Sagan. He's been so very close, but that's going to put him a lot closer to leading the green jersey points competition. Stybar, unbelievably talented professional bike rider, Stybar, but hard to know when you think about it. Won the World Cyclo-Cross Championships on 3 occasions. And I don't think even Cavendish, who's congratulating there, can know what has happened to the man who started the race in the overall lead. Here's confirmation that Stybar 2 seconds ahead of Peter Sagan. Coquard in 3rd place at 2 seconds. Degenkolb in 3rd. Van Avermaet in 5th place. Tony Galopin in 6th. Edvald Bozenhagen in 7th place. And Gorka Izagirre of Movistar up there in 10th. And all that because of the very nasty confusion created by that crash. Tony Martin was the man who hit the back wheel of Brian Coquard. Just looking down there, that little structure you can see in the bottom there is known as the Volcan, or the Volcano. It's earned the nickname locally as the Yogurt Pot, and was renamed back in 1990. Decision of its director Alain Milanti. Today it houses a theatre and an all-purpose hall, including a cinema and recording studios.
Well,
Welcome to stage 7 of the Tour de France. This is Matthew Keenan with you in Fougères. Under glorious sunshine, the sprinters will get another chance at success today. But can anyone beat Andre Greipel? As they leave Normandy, they finish the stage in Brittany, in Fougères. It's 190.5 kilometres. There's an intermediate sprint, and that comes with still 125 kilometres to go. The one climate's category 4, that's early after just 12 Ks having been covered. The approach to the finish line, though, it definitely does suit the fast men. This is a look back to earlier on this afternoon for the start of the stage, with the flag coming in courtesy of the race director Christian Prudhomme. And as soon as that happened, 2 riders from the Breton-Séché team going on the attack. Anthony de la Place joined by Brice Fairlou, and they're in the breakaway. With them, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification, Daniel Tecla-Hymenont. They've been over the one climb of the day, and he won. He's collected another point. He is now on 4 points in the battle for that jersey, 2 clear of Joaquim Rodriguez, who's in second position. Christian Durasek is in the breakaway, Croatian rider for the Lampre team. And Luis Angel Mate, a Spaniard riding for the French Cofidis squad, rounds out the quartet off the front. And they haven't been given a lot of leeway. 2 minutes and 46 seconds. That's about as good as it's been for the 4 riders off the front. Tomorrow the race goes to the Mer de Bretagne. That definitely will not suit the sprinters. Sagan might be able to survive, but very few others will. We've then got the team time trial on Sunday, the rest day Monday, and then it's into the mountains. So the sprinters very much wanting to make the most of this one. And this is a famous national stud chateau, Equestrian of Versailles. Effectively, it was King Louis XIV, along with his main minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who decided in 1665 to create this stud to raise stallions and improve the quality of racing in France. Just before the revolution, the King's stud had 196 stallions. There's just one horse, though, that is actually buried here. It is Furioso, which is a horse that had 21 starts with 0 wins, but it side many winners later on, and it is the only horse that is buried at this chateau. Normandy, in fact, produces some 40% of the racehorses in France. This is Mikael Golash at the front for edX Quickstep, doing the chasing today for Mark Cavendish as the pressure continues to mount for the Manx Missile. The peloton now making their way past this stunning chateau. And surprisingly, throughout the Battle of Normandy in World War II, it went unscathed. We can't say that for much of the other parts of Normandy that we'll traverse throughout today's stage. Following the French Revolution, it was sold on to private owners. And welcome to Normandy. 2 days ago, we raced through the Somme and spoke a lot about the First World War. Today, there'll be a lot of references to the Second World War. Chris Froome, he is the leader of the race overall, but is not wearing the yellow jersey. Tony Martin, the overall race leader, a non-starter today. It's the 4th time this has happened in the history of the Tour. It happened in 2007 when Michael Rasmussen was withdrawn from the race by his team, and Alberto Contador, who's now on screen, number 41, did not wear the yellow jersey the following day. It happened in 1991 when Rolf Sorensen, wearing yellow, crashed out and broke his collarbone. Greg LeMond, the American, then assumed the race lead but did not wear the yellow jersey. And back in 1971, the famous Spanish climber Lucian Ocaña, he crashed out in yellow. Eddie Merckx decided the following day that he wouldn't wear yellow. Chris Froome continues a proud tradition in cycling. The intermediate sprint today being hosted in the town of Argentan, which played a significant role, at least it was a very strategic point throughout the Second World War. And unfortunately, much of the town was destroyed. The good news is, though, it has predominantly been rebuilt. A childhood dream realised yesterday for Daniel Tekle-Hamanot from NTM Quebecer. Thibaut Pinot back with the race medical service. Third in the Tour de France last year. Pinot said it yesterday that his hopes for the general classification are over. He's going to focus on trying to win a stage. His team manager and team owner, Marc Madio, has said, well, they shouldn't be over. He's only 6 minutes and 30 seconds down. And if you're 6 minutes and 30 seconds down in Paris, you'll be well placed overall. So Marc Madio's expectations are that Thibaut Pinot will pull himself together psychologically and get back focused on the general classification. He sits in 30th position overall. He will improve on that once we reach the mountains, provided he can keep himself together. 3 kilometres for the leading group of 5 before they hit the intermediate sprints. And back in the main peloton, the race will be for 6th position, which has 10 points up for grabs. Whoever wins the intermediate sprint from this group will collect 20 points, and then it works its way down to 15th position. It collects just the 1 point. The lanky French climber, Brice Filou. His brother, Romain Filou, who's not in the race this year, has been a yellow jersey wearer in the Tour de France. And that was way back in 2008. He collected the yellow jersey on a rain-soaked day into Nantes. No such weather conditions today. 23 degrees at the start, 27 here at the finish line in Fougères, and not a cloud in the sky. It is a glorious day as they transition from Normandy into Brittany. A word that is often used in reference to number 21, Thibaut Pinot, is enigmatic. He just went past the red number of Peric Cuminaire, who was in the break yesterday for the 3rd time. Peter Sagan just describing to Mikhail Kwiatkowski exactly what is about to happen with the intermediate sprints. 2nd on the stage yesterday, again for Peter Sagan. That's the 3rd time this year, and it's the 14th time in his career since making his debut at the Tour in 2012. He shows no signs of being frustrated by it. As a comparison, Cavendish throughout his career, who's won 25 stages, mind you, Cavendish has only ever finished 2nd 3 times. So he either wins or he's way off the money. Andre Greipel, he's finished 2nd 5 times. This should be indicating 1 kilometre to the intermediate sprint, and that's precisely what it does. The Lamprey colours with the Croatian, that is Christian Jurasek, who this year managed to win the Tour of Turkey. He got that win ahead of Edwald Sepúlveda, who's riding here in this year's Tour de France with the Breton Sachet team. And in 3rd position was Jane McCarthy, young Australian, a Queenslander who rides with the Tinkoff Saxo team, who might just still be a few years off making his debut in the Tour de France. One of the many men who fell yesterday, Vincenzo Nibali. He said the injuries aren't too serious, but he was a little heated afterwards. In fact, his immediate reaction was to blame Chris Froome for the fall. Chris Froome heard about Vincenzo's complaints and quickly went to the Astana team bus. The two of them got together, they spoke about it, they watched the replay, and then each of them apologised for what was a heated exchange before they watched it together. And Vincenzo Nibali, he said, we're cyclists, not footballers, taking a dig at the world game. The sprint is on. Matt Day is trying to get there first, the links of Andalusia. And in the minor positions, it will be Filou, De La Place, Jurasek, Tekle-Hamanot. And in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, we'll have the sprint for 6th. One across the line from that main field will collect 10, then works its way down. 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 5, 3, 2, 1. for the minor placings. Famous for its French racehorses in Normandy, as they're about to head into Brittany over the next couple of days, which will be an entertaining day tomorrow once we get to the Mur de Bretagne, which in 2011, that stage was won by Cadel Evans ahead of Alberto Contador. So we'll have another battle amongst the big four in the race for yellow tomorrow. This is the sprint. It's now Lotto Soudal starting to lead things out, looking for the setup for Andre Greipel. They're underneath the kite with 1 kilometre remaining. The train on the left, this is Kundecourt for Giant Alpecin. They're looking to lead out Degenkolb, who's fourth in line. Marcel Seberg is muscling his way in, disrupting the train as Sagan pushes Greipel out of the way. It's Cavendish who is then the next in line. Renshaw is there with him as well. Brian Cocker in the green colours at the back of the group. Waiting to pounce, Degenkolb. He's a fair way down in the battle for green, but if he has long-term ambitions, he needs to pick up points at the intermediates. He's been a little bit short in this big sprint finishes at the end of the stages. 10 points up for grabs. Sagan in whites. It is then Greipel. Degenkolb opens up. Cavendish goes on the far left. The long way around. More frustration for Cavendish. Degenkolb holds on from Sagan and Greipel. And Cavendish going the long way around. When does the self-doubt start to creep in for Mark Cavendish? Not that that was a full-blown sprint, but confidence is always very important for the sprinters. So what that does for the race for the green jersey is reduce Andre Greipel's lead from 3 points down to 2 points, ahead of the man in the white jersey, Peter Sagan.
We're heading through some magnificent touristic regions of France this afternoon. 25 degrees Celsius, humidity 31%. I think the riders will be quite happy to look up the incredible blue skies. Hardly a fear of rain or thunderstorms in the latter part of the afternoon for them. This is the feeding station. I always find it a very dangerous place to go through because everybody's zigzagging left and right to take on board those bags from their team helpers. But of course, it's also a very important place where there's a huge crowd, and crowds are looking to try and pick themselves up a nice little souvenir if they can.
And what a historic day it is for Africa in general and Eritrea in particular. Daniel Teklehaimanot in the breakaway again today and increased his lead in the King of the Mountains. The first day he's worn, any African has worn the polka dot leaders jersey in the King of the Mountains competition. It's the dream continues on day 2 for him in the Tour de France. This of course is day 7. And the field now down to 186, but MTN Quebec, all 9 riders still very much a part of the Tour.
No, certainly a very sad day for New Zealand cycling after the abandon early on in the Tour of Jack Bauer after a very nasty accident. Greg Henderson, who was battling over the last couple of days with a very severely broken rib. In fact, it was a complicated. He tried to, well, he pulled himself through the stage yesterday, but because of the severity of that injury, he just wasn't able to come out and start today. And a sad day really for Greg Henderson, because he is really one of the important parts of Andre Greipel's victories in the Tour de France over the last couple of years.
No real challenges on the route today except to get to the finishing line now, which is on this stage of 190 kilometres. There we can pick up on this beautiful Chateau de Carouge. As we look down on the Chateau of Carouge here, which is a superb 14th century castle, the Tour de France about to go past it. 5 men lead the race and the gap has held more or less a steady 2¼ minutes for a long time.
Yes, riders coming out from the gun this morning after just 1 kilometre, a 5-man break forming, building up at one stage almost 4 minutes. But ever since then, it's the teams of the sprinters who've kept the pace nice and high and pegged it back to just outside the 2-minute margin. Just looking down at this magnificent 14th century castle, which was founded by Jean de Carouge, who was the chamberlain of Duke Pierre of Alençon. It was pretty dramatically devastated and rebuilt after the 100 Years' War by Jean Blauzet and restored after the Second World War in 1944. A beautiful castle. Etixx Quick-Step, well, today they will be trying to get themselves another victory. Zdeněk Stybar yesterday got the win for them, but it was a bittersweet day for Etixx Quick-Step with the abandon of Tony Martin this morning, unable to come out to the start after a very complex fracture.
Well, they've just come through the feeding station. It's a pretty good speed at the moment. They're averaging 40.5 kilometers an hour today over the 2 hours they've gone, but at the moment that speed is going to increase because they're pushing up the average now to 43. The weather conditions are perfect. There is a wind, we will call it a breeze. It's quite strong at the finishing line and it will be across the riders, but when they get down to the finish in Fougères today, they don't actually see the banner until the last 75 meters or so of the straight, because it sweeps round a right-hand bend. It's not a sharp bend, but it is a sweeper.
Yes, and although on the race profile it doesn't really look as if it's a lumpy finish, it's actually quite undulating, big sweeping roads on the road down in. There's a couple of roundabouts inside of the last 3 kilometers of the race, and as you say, it swings around to the right once they get into the heart of the finishing town of Fougères, and it continues to climb up to the finish line. So you never really see the finishing banner until you come around the final corner with about 75 to 80 meters to go. So you've got to be very careful in where you make your effort. But as we've seen very often, the man in second position there, Thomas de Gendt, he's done a lot of pacemaking just to make sure that breakaway didn't get too far away. As you can see the long line beginning to appear now. We're about 2 hours and 20 minutes away from the finish, 95 kilometers to go. The gaps come inside of the 2-minute margin. The 5 leaders in the leading group, 2 riders from the Breton team, the Bretagne Sèche Environnement. That was Anthony Delaplace and Bryce Vellu, who's riding his 5th Tour de France. Daniel Tekla-Heimanot of MTN Kubeka, Luis Angel Mate of Cofidis, and Christian Durasek of Lampre. And he's the only Croatian rider in the breakaway. Little chat there, as we can see there is the world champion. Amazing to see this youngster, 24 years of age, world champion, Michael Kwiatkowski, doing a lot of pacemaking. He's shouting there quickly to Michel Golas, the Polish rider. He's compatriot on the squad there, who's done a lot of pacemaking. Cavendish will come down to the finish today without the big firepower of Tony Martin, who had a very complex fracture of the collarbone. In fact, had a long ride back to get himself sorted out. In fact, he drove last night 250 kilometers by car from the race finish yesterday up to Belgium, where he went to Wevelgem and then flew in a private jet from Wevelgem to Hamburg, and he was operated on in the early hours of this morning, and he sent a great big thank you out over social media to everybody involved in getting him from the race to the hospital and for carrying out that operation. But he did say, well, I lived the dream. I managed to win myself a stage and the yellow jersey, and I can't wait to get better and get back into the sport and enjoy the emotions of the Tour de France, hopefully next year. Fairly certain we'll start to see the black and white jerseys of Giant Alpecin come forward to try and prepare the end of today's stage for John Degenkolb, who's been very, very close since the start of this race and will obviously be beginning to think about the possibility of getting himself his opening account here. Beautiful horses. By the way, as we go through Normandy, we went through the earlier part of today's stage past the National Stud of France, and Normandy provides 40% or breeds 40% of the race horses of France. Also provides trains 50% of the trotters. Well, a quick whip around there. That's well, that's a bit strange, because that is Rigoberto Urán. He lies in 7th place in the overall standing. I was talking about him just a little bit earlier. He's another of these guys who was riding underneath the radar in the early part of this race. He's a great rider, Urán, and he's a bit of a dark horse too for a little later on. Maybe today he's working for the team. He finished 3rd this year in the Tirreno Adriatico race, but he finished 2nd overall a year ago in the Giro d'Italia. He's a very, very good climber from Colombia, and he's currently the national time trial champion as well.
Continues in the ascendancy at the moment, Paul. 1:40 now, and it's going to get hotter too as we race towards the finish today.
No, it certainly will get a lot hotter, and we'll start to see different teams coming forward, getting themselves organised as we move through the magnificent little town now of Lassay. Peloton stretching out over the road as they don't have time to look at some of the magnificent backdrops here, and some of the castles in this area were built dating back to 1458. And one we're looking at just now, in fact, was dismantled in 1422 and rebuilt. It commands an incredible view of the village and lake and contains a 2-storey barbican listed as a national monument in 1862.
But it's famous for those 8 towers, Paul, and, you know, a castle's a castle, but they're all so different in France. That is such a beautiful structure, 8 separate towers.
Yes, quite magnificent. Has a drawbridge, by the way, which was replaced in the 18th century by a swing bridge.
Wow, now that really is catching up with time. Here's the peloton. Joe Van Summeren on the front with his bandaged knee at the moment for Team AG2R. 1:44. Well, let's call it a cheeky move, but they've gone from 58 seconds out to 1:44. Maybe Jens Voigt has got the answer. Jens, we were 58 seconds all set to be caught, and now it's approaching 2 minutes. What's going on?
It's a standard procedure. Like already you guys mentioned it before, the sprinter teams don't want to reopen the course by catching them too early. They know they have the riders in control. They can catch them anytime they really need to. But they want to let them out there so nobody tries to jump across and creates a little more stress in the peloton. So they just let them go out a little bit. They probably try to keep him between 2 and 3 minutes to stay safe. And yeah, then slowly starting chasing him back towards the end. And the break, of course, tries to stay out there until the end.
Yeah, Jens, a bit of a game of poker going on here. One team who I think have been quite absent since the first part of the chase was organised is Giant Alpecin of Degenkolb. Are they hoping to have a bit more firepower towards the end? I think that's their game.
That might be the case, that they're saving it all for one big, massive lead out today and go all in and finally giving John Degenkolb his first and so much desired stage win for him. And yep, they got a fair chance to making it today.
Are you familiar with any of the riders in the break, Jens? Because they must know that they're being left out to fry, surely.
Yes, actually, Brice Fayou, the former Tour de France stage winner, he is a former teammate of me. He was with Team Leopard back in the days. I believe it was 2011. He was my teammate. And believe it or not, he actually back then, he did not live in an apartment or in a house. He lived in a trailer. He lived in a trailer in a camping park.
Terrific, well done. We're looking at a former world champion Rui Costa here. That chateau, Paul, that we just saw, Thibaut Wood, it's sort of abandoned now, but it's one of the most important castles in the area.
Yeah, it was built originally on the site of a feudal castle. It was abandoned during the 100 Years' War. Of course, that was the war between the English and the French. But around about 1467, it was renovated, and the main construction was made up of 2 great buildings flanked by the 2 great round towers. Open to the public, by the way, at the weekend from 9 till 5.
Take their umbrellas. 1:44 seconds, the gap just now.
Yep, 1:45. Well, that's a gap of around about 1¼ kilometres at speeds like this, and they are getting themselves organised. The rider that Jens Voigt was talking about there, Brice Fayou, well, he rose to prominence in the 2009 Tour de France when he won a stage of the Tour de France with a long breakaway into the Andorran ski resort of Arcalis. And it was a tough day as well that he got himself the victory on that occasion. And he also managed to garner himself the King of the Mountains. But since then he's battled around, although he has ridden in the Tour de France every year since 2012, finished 91st, 104th, and he was 16th overall last year. So he is the kind of guy that if he gets everything right, he can ride well in the mountains. Just got a chance there to see, just as we looked over the horizon, we're starting to get into that lumpy part of Brittany now. Greg Henderson, sadly, out. He actually was involved in the nasty crash on stage 3. He wanted to do everything he could to stay in the Tour de France, to look after Andre Greipel. He and Andre Greipel have worked out. A lot of people start to talk about the pilot fish, the man who leads out the sprinters, and he'd been really important to Andre Greipel over the years. And I wonder if that will go against Andre Greipel's sprint finish towards the end today, or maybe Tony Galopin, who himself is riding high in the standings in 5th place overall, could turn the books around and try and be the lead-out man for Andre Greipel.
Very impressive. He ranks 3 in all time. And a couple of more, and he would rank 2nd. Eddie Merckx has got 34, so a little bit of work to do there. 44 seconds the gap as we look here at the speed now, just tickling 50 kilometers an hour. That's the power meter on the bicycle of the champion of Switzerland, Danilo Wies. He's there in that white cross rather, on his red jersey.
Yeah, and I was just saying a little earlier, the amazing thing about him, Phil, is he's won that race across America on 2 occasions, which is quite a crazy thing to think about doing when you're a professional bike rider, and it takes a different mentality to do that. But like many of the other riders in this race, you can see on his left forearm he's got that net bandaging. He too, like many other people, has been involved in 1 or 2 little nasty accidents.
Well, this is a nice what is it, an aeroplane?
I think that'll be a rooster, Phil, the red, white and blue.
Is that rooster?
Le Coq de France.
Le Coq Sportif.
And the Mayenne
Well, it'll never take off. It's trying, but it'll never take off. The French get some amazing ideas, and they must tip off the helicopter crews because they're always on site.
Yeah, the helicopter crew do an amazing job of getting us some of the most magnificent views as we drag ourselves around the hexagon of France, as they like to call it. And again, when we go to the front end of the peloton, same old man on the front, Thomas de Gent. He also, as you can see, the bandages on his knees. It'd be a nice little poll to get in there and find out just how many riders have not fallen down in the Tour de France so far since we left Utrecht over a week ago. So looking now at the last few moments of the 4-man leading group, they're heading into town. Well, just looking at the flags over to the right-hand side, a flag of Europe cars supporting the local team. Well, the local team pretty much when they get a little bit further down towards Nantes and down towards the Vendée. Very many people regard, it's a big discussion as to whether or not Nantes is part of Brittany, although the people who live in Nantes really do believe that they are the heart of Brittany. But certainly very much the region we're going to around Rennes, around Saint-Brieuc, that really is the heart of Brittany. There are the leaders. As we pull back now, we can see just where the main field is.
Well, that's it, the Hollowell picture when the relationship from the helicopter shows us 4 riders at the top of our picture, the peloton still trying to back off as best they can, and the gap now excruciatingly painful at 38 seconds.
Yeah, I think the little attacks coming from that remaining group of 4 riders there, Phil, is to try and put their hands up to say, excuse me, well, can I get the most aggressive rider award of the day this afternoon?
Well, at 19 kilometres, we will actually be saying goodbye to Normandy and crossing into Brittany for the final 17-18 kilometres of the day of racing. We've seen the capture of Tekla Heimanot. Let's hope he can stay with the peloton now on the run into the finish.
Well, just looking down on this shadow down towards the bottom, this is the castle of Le Var, which is pretty much regarded as a feudal castle in the heart of the Mayenne. It's existed for a long time. You can see the old moat, or you could see the old moat around the outside. But what I think more impressive is I wonder if you could mow your lawn at home like that.
It's a nice thought, but getting those wheels pure circles is the big problem. In the distance, the peloton, the 4 leaders here, cheers for everybody. Our camera lens foreshortening there, the flag of Great Britain flying alongside the French flag.
Yeah, 33 seconds at speed like this is around about 400 metres. It is foreshortened a little bit by the television lens, but for the main field, they can see the peloton, they can see the leading group of 4, they know how much effort they need to pull them in. I think we'll start to see a general accelerate. You can see Sky moving up Chris Froome, you can see BMC moving TJ Van Garderen forward, and again, very much the same scenario as everywhere. These big contenders, we talk about the Fantastic Four, I think we're going to have to make it the Fabulous Five now, because TJ Van Garderen is starting to take a serious option on a high finish in the overall standings, because he's going to climb up into 2nd place tonight. But the important thing is he has to stay safe, he has to stay upright, And we saw yesterday when it looked as if there was going to be no change in the overall standings and Tony Martin was going to keep the yellow jersey all the way down towards the Pyrenean Mountains. Well, just inside of that final kilometre he crashed. Now, if he hadn't been injured, he would have been given, well, he was given the same time as everybody else in that group with him, but unfortunately that was a very nasty break of the collarbone and he was unable to continue today. Another little move. This is again Anthony de la Place, just attacking one more time, but he's not breaking the stranglehold, not opening up any daylight between himself and the rest. That's Mate who made the response. He's making the move now, covered by Bryce Felu. And looking back over his shoulder, Durasek from Lambrey says, "Oh, forget it. It's too far to go. It's hurting too much. I've been away for much too long now, so I'll let these two guys have a bit of freedom," as we now move into the département of the Ille-et-Vilaine. Final département of the afternoon. Which is coming, we're over 170 kilometres covered now. The finish of the race is 190 kilometres. These two, 13 seconds, 250 metres their advantage over the peloton.
Well, look at these two. We've only got 15 kilometres to go. Two riders are all that remain now. And it looks as though they're all going to be closed down in the next kilometre or so.
On the left-hand side of the picture, you can just see the red and white jerseys of Team Lotto Soudal. They are trying to get victory number 3 in this year's Tour de France for their big man, Andre Greipel, whose nickname, by the way, he was christened that when he used to go and race in Australia in the Santos Tour Down Under, is the Gorilla, because he's such a big man.
He's also a bit of a rap artist too. I've seen him on the stage and he's pretty cool. Anyway, the race here now, still chasing them down. And Fellure here, who once won a stage of the Tour de France in Arcalis and Andorra, is also refusing to back off.
Yep, well, 12 and a half kilometres to go, 11 seconds. They have hovered outside the front end of the main field for quite some time, and it's pretty impressive, really, because when you look at the main field, they are not hanging around. We're looking to pay. I mean, it looks quite easy when you're sitting at home in front of the television, just having a nice cup of coffee and thinking, well, these guys are just cruising along, but they're cruising along in excess of 30 miles an hour, pretty close to 50, 55 kilometers an hour, I would say, is the average speed. These guys are prolonging the agony. They will get caught, I'm 99.9% certain. Give them a little 0.1% chance of survival in case something goes wrong in the main field, but theoretically it should all be done, and it should be all down to a big bunch sprint down towards the line. MTN Quebec have had a great job on the day, with Daniel Tekla-Heimenot getting his 1 point out on the course to extend his lead in the King of the Mountains competition. But they've got two sprinters. They've got Tyler Farrar, the American, on their squad, and Edvald Bosenhagen of Norway.
11.6 kilometres. We're still there, but oh dear, no, not now. The clock's almost not in a timing position now as Mate looks over his shoulder. 11 kilometres to go, Paul. That means they were in the lead for 178 kilometres.
A long way, a long time to get a bit of television time in an event like this, but as they like to say in Italian, gruppo compacto, the group is all back together now. It's eyes down, house in, and put your bets on who you think is going to be the fastest sprinter in today's stage. And let's hope it's a nice, safe sprint, and they're going to have to start now to wind it up to high speeds as they start to get to the part of the outskirts of Fougères, where all the roundabouts and excitement will begin.
10.8 kilometres to go. We are looking for 10 kilometres to go now, about 300 metres to go. The last two survivors got swept up. The bunch didn't even look at them. They put them back in the back of the peloton. There's a lot of concentrated effort at the front now, because this, Paul, is one of the few occasions on the Tour de France, not just this week, but for the whole Tour, when we're going to be treated to the whole field racing for the line.
Yes, it's very rare now that we'll see the big bunch sprints. We got to wait for most of the sprinters. The next designated sprinter stage is Valence, and that's a long way in the future. And the one after that, well, that's on the final Sunday on the Champs-Élysées. But here for the moment, it's again the same scenario we've had on every occasion so far when the bunch has been together. A drag race with all of the teams of the overall contenders occupying almost the first 5 lines.
Well, again, there are riders being brought to the front who are long-term favourites to win the Tour de France, to try and keep them out of trouble. But remember, yesterday All of the favourites caught up in that crash. We are now at 10 kilometres to go. And the leaders now, these roads are narrow, they change direction a little bit. From this point, they're supposed to pick up something of a tailwind for a short distance, so we could well see the speed accelerate here.
Yeah, the funny thing is, Phil, it looks so easy when you see 5 teams lining up at the front end of the main field, charging along on these Breton roads. But when you see the main field behind stretched out into a long line, I can tell you from experience, there's a lot of guys at the back there just gasping for breath, just hanging onto the wheel in front of them, wanting to survive over the next 10 or maybe 11 minutes of effort.
Brittany knows all about cycling. This is the hotbed of the sport of cycling here in France, and they've waited to see the Tour go through. This is the lovely, attractive village of La Chapelle-Liançon, and we just passed the church of Saint-Lézin. Sky have got control at the front. Remember, if the race comes home together, Chris Froome will be the next leader of the Tour de France, and he'll be pulling on in history his 16th yellow jersey.
Well, that was a big turn on the front by Luke Rowe, but moving up into second position now is Ian Stannard. Froome is in third position. Look at him, just looks like a great big old praying mantis waiting to leap out. Behind him it's Geraint Thomas, but then you've got the team of BMC there, never very far away, really easy to spot with their yellow helmets. They lead the team classification, and of course they've got TJ Van Garderen right up in the overall standings. So far, apart from that accident yesterday that he was involved in, steering a very good first week of this race.
These are incredibly dangerous moments for the long-term thinkers in the Tour de France, the men that will put time into others in the mountains. They hate these stages. They're fraught with danger. Now again, when we get 3 kilometres out from the finish, that's where the clock will stop as far as the race goes, if there's any accidents after that 3 kilometre point. So if Froome, for example, is in this pack at 3 to go, then he will be the next leader of the Tour de France. There they are, the boys in Giant. They believe in John Degenkolb. This is his best chance to win. The winner of Paris-Roubaix. Geraint Thomas on the other side of the road. Nasty split coming our way. Happily we all survive. Vermont has rejoined here.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, I would not have given him very many chances of getting back on. He's not really going to be able to get up to the front of the main field. You see the little shake there of the head from Renshaw saying, no, not yet, no, yet, keep calm, just wait. We've got plenty of riders here. Let's get ourselves mustered. Let's get ourselves organised. Michael Kwiatkowski, by the way, in the white jersey, is quite a reference as a professional bike rider. He's the world champion at 24 years of age. He's moving to the front of the pack.
Look at this.
Oh,
Vermont is scurrying up there to try and get up to Cavendish and do what he can do. This is a first-year pro here. He knows his job.
Well, Phil, I would tell you that is an impossible thing to do, but it's in his first Tour de France. He wants to do everything he can to get up there. Any little bit of help he could give in the last 1.5 kilometres would be superb, and that's why he's doing everything he can. That's an amazing performance. I don't think he'll ever see the front again, but he knows how important it is. Giant Alpecin in the black and white there. Now it's the boys of Etixx Quickstep. That's Cavendish going through there. The overall contenders now starting to slip away just a fraction from the front end of the main field. MTN moving forward in the black and white over on the right-hand side.
Well, Giant have got the team lined out. They've somehow managed to get through this pack and get the team formation here. And the man at the end is John Degenkolb. Now, it is a very difficult sprint when we finally get to it. It kicks up and you don't actually see the finishing line till you're in the last 75, 85 metres. So you've got to make it inch perfect when you go.
Right, coming up now, inside of 3 kilometres to go, they'll have the first of a series of roundabouts. Now, the race map tells the riders they have to go round to the right-hand side. The road has been sectioned off for the riders to get around there nice and safely. Still trying to line themselves up, Giant Alpecin, but there's the red and white jerseys now moving forward. That is Katusha. That is for Alexander Kristoff.
Well, they're coming off that bottom bend now. Now, don't forget the white jersey is Peter Sagan. They say it favours him. The black jersey is John Degenkolb. The white and red jersey is Alexander Kristoff. The blue jersey is Mark Cavendish. And they're all up there at the moment. And we're looking for the 2 kilometre mark now. We are absolutely flying here. We are riding the kilometre inside 1 minute.
What you've got to understand is these guys currently are charging along at around about 58 to 60 kilometres an hour. When they get to the full speed in their sprint, they're touching 70 kilometres an hour. This is still the lead-out train, and now the challenge is coming from the French, right in the middle in the red, white and blue. That is FDJ.
I just timed that kilometre. it was 51 seconds as they dodged that one, and now they've split them up. A 51-second kilometre between 3 and 2. We're now 1.8 from the finish, and Christoph is in position.
Well, Giant Alpecin took the wrong way around that roundabout, and all of a sudden they've got no lead-out train organised at all. Now, FDJ are looking out for Arnaud Demar. You can see the red, white and blue. They're organised now, and Peter Sagan in his white jersey is well up there.
And the speed has split the field here with that roundabout now, and Sagan is in a good position. So too is Christoph. Cavendish is here as well, and he's still locked on with his lead-out man, Mark Renshaw.
Well, Phil, 1.3 kilometres to go. Once they see the kilometre flag, there's going to be a little bit of a sweep around to the right-hand side. The red and white jerseys are Lotto Soudal. The fourth rider there in the green jersey is Andre Greipel. But look how that is stretched out.
Look at the length of the line. The sprinters have got control of the field here. These boys are giving it. Marcel Seeberg, the man they call the Tower, swinging off, making way, he hopes eventually for Greipel. Now another sharp right-hander here, and they're going to get round it. I thought for a moment they wouldn't do. And it's Lotto with Greipel in third place at 800 metres.
Greipel is right up there. He's got two men in front of him, and this is an ideal situation as he goes around the corner. They're all queuing up on Andre Greipel's wheel here this afternoon, and they're opening up in the sprint. They're looking for 500 metres to go. You can see that Christoph is right in the middle, and so too is Cavendish and Renshaw.
And Degenkolb is coming on the right here, and Cavendish has been split off his man again. That doesn't normally happen, but he's still there on the wheel of Alexander Christoph. Greipel has got boxed in. He's going to have to find his way out of this now as they come up at 2:50 to go. Greipel breaks for the line now. Cavendish is in with a shout here. So too Peter Sagan and the life. They're all chasing Greipel. Cavendish coming through on the left of our picture. Cavendish has won the day. He has broken the jinx. Stage 13 in 2013. He's now again a winner of the Tour de France. He's 26th in history. He will be over the moon. And Tony Martin on his hospital bed will, I'm afraid to say, jump with delight. Remember that arm.
Well, I think he will. Just look at that as they come here. He was boxed in at this moment there. Cavendish is a cool operator. He sees the gap opening up. He's coming up alongside the man who was his former teammate. Cavendish gets the win he's looking for. Greipel second. I think they're just ahead of Sagan. And John Degenkolb has to settle for fourth position there. Oh, that was very close.
I think Sagan was second.
Very close between second and third, I will tell you.
Well, that is amazing. Let's have a look at the photo. It was Cavendish, Greipel, and then Sagan and Degenkolb, and then Christoph. That was the order over the line.
5 great sprinters
the best
inside
in the
of the top 5. That, Phil, is what you would call a sprint royale.
The best in the world. Well done, Mark Cavendish. He's back.
Well, there were people who doubted this man, but it comes to the big occasions, and as I said a little earlier, very often in the Tour de France, it's taken him a couple of days to just get those sprinting legs going, and in the city of Fougères, Greipel is pushed into second position, Sagan third, Degenkolb fourth, and Christoph in fifth place. Mark Cavendish, well, he was the man to pick today because he certainly knows how to rise to the big occasions. Stage victory number 26th throughout his career. Going to have to wait a long time now to try and get himself back up there, but of course for Andre Greipel, he finished ahead of Peter Sagan, so he will keep his lead in the green jersey points competition. What a dramatic sprint down to the line. Great sprint finish there this afternoon, and just not too far away from us. If you think that the sport of professional cycling is all about tightrope walking, well, that man is just giving us a slight demonstration. Fortunately, he's got the safety rope there as well. Health and safety above all.
Wow, just look at this sprint, Paul. This was a sprint royale of the finest finishers, and they all got it right.
Well, they were all in and out there looking for the move. At this point, Cavendish was right onto the wheel of Alexander Christoph. Again, you can see that Andre Greipel this time went very, very quickly, and Cavendish had said, I need to learn a little bit of patience. All of a sudden, Peter Sagan could have taken him out there. Sagan looking to go down the left-hand side, but when Cavendish gets that acceleration at the right time, to put it into perspective, Phil, these guys are all doing almost the same speed, and I would say that sprint was pretty close to 70 kilometres an hour.
Bet your life. Oh, I'm not sure I want to look at this, but those sprinters and Mark Cavendish finally getting the win. Well, they're turning this race into an incredible week for Etixx Quick-Step. The ups and downs of the Tour de France for that team. One day crying with happiness, other days with sadness. As we have a little look around the great chateaus here in Fougères now, as we've arrived into Brittany with the race today. This looks like the former convent of the Urbaniste.
Yeah, that was, as we go back to the Chateau of Fougères, a great chateau as well, the Castle of Fougères. That the man is tightrope walking, like very many of the sprinters were here this afternoon, because that really certainly did go down to the wire. I'm glad to see that Mark Cavendish has been able to quiet the critics just a little bit.
Mark, many congratulations. After your longest wait between stage wins, 2 years and so much frustration, can you begin to put into words what that victory meant?
No, I wanted it. I just had this feeling like I was lying in the room with my wife and my daughter yesterday, and I was just like, just got this feeling, you know, just where I was relaxed. I knew today was okay, you know. Nice one, man. And the team were motivated. You could see when Michael Golis was pulling the front, the gap was really coming down. The team were really, I was incredible. But after the near misses, after they worked so long, the last 2 times for me in the sprint, them to keep the faith like that was incredible. You know, after Stevie's win yesterday, come out after such a loss with Tony, to do like we did. So nice to get a win today, for Tony especially. So.
As you pointed out at the beginning, you've won on uphill finishes like this in the past on the Tour, but to hold the power all the way to the line, that was a huge effort today, wasn't it?
I didn't actually hold it, I had to back off because Greipel came back. I was waiting, I saw in the intermediate sprint, I sat behind in the intermediate sprint, I saw they were waiting late. Everyone's got tired legs. I said to Mark, I've got to leave it late. And I wanted to come from behind, then I saw Christoph had 2 guys left. I manoeuvred onto him and I waited, and just as I was about to go, Andre came and he just got, I was like, I thought that was it, you know. Had to back off. We passed Christoph and I just got through, you know, shoulder to shoulder with Sagan. But I just wanted it so bad, Ned, you know, and I'm so happy about that.
Brilliant win, well done.
Thank you.
Well, I don't think you have to interpret any of the enthusiasm there at all. It has been a very long wait, Phil, to go back to his last stage victory. Unfortunately, he crashed out in the first stage last year, wasn't able to continue in the Tour de France. But I think one of those things with a sprinter, they feed on success, and I've got just a gut feeling that that's not going to be the last victory for him. And look how much, as we look at the overall standings, Peter Sagan is moving forward.
A day for the British riders as well, because Chris Froome now will return as leader of the Tour tomorrow. He gets the yellow jersey left vacant today with the loss of Tony Martin, also Cavendish's teammate.